Buenas and Hafa. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this hearing of the Committee on Health and Veterans Affairs, of which I serve as chairperson. The time is 2:01 in the afternoon. It is Monday, June 15th, 2026. Thank you for those who are joining us in person, as well as those who are watching us online on our YouTube stream, as well as on our channel on cable. We are here to accept testimony on the following measures. Bill number 32138 COR, introduced by Vice Speaker Tony Atta. It is an act to add new subsection 67114 to Chapter 67, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, relative to creating the Guam Veterans Cemetery Renovation and Expansion Fund. We will also accept testimony on Bill number 32938 COR, introduced by myself, Senator Sabrina Salas Matanane. It is an act to add a new Chapter 7A to Division 1 of Title 10 Guam Code Annotated, to add a new subsection 7101.1 to Chapter 7 of Division 1 of Title 10 GCA, to add a new subsection 2907.5 to Article 9, Chapter 2, Division 1, Title 10 GCA, to direct conforming regulatory amendments to Title 26 Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations, and to amend subsection 25101, 25102, 25104, 25105, and subsection 22101 of Division 1, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, relative to establishing a comprehensive statutory framework for home and community-based settings on Guam. Before we get started, I'd like to note that notice of today's hearing was properly provided and posted in accordance with the open government law. It was shared with senators, stakeholders, and members of the media, and was also posted on the Guam Legislature's website and public notice portal. All hearing materials have been uploaded to the committee drive, and printed copies are available if needed. Today's hearing is also being recorded and again will be posted on our YouTube channel for viewing. With that, I'd like to recognize my colleagues that are with us here today: the Vice Chair of the Committee on Health, Vice Speaker Tony Atta, Senator Shawn Gumataotao, as well as Senator Chris Dueñas. Yes, and before we get started, just a couple of reminders that senators will each have 5 minutes to ask their questions. As for members of the public that will be testifying today, we ask that you please speak closely into the microphone. And we are going to begin with Bill 321, again introduced by Vice Speaker Tony Atta. If you are here to testify on this bill, please come forward and have a seat at the table. And before we accept public testimony, I'll have the author of this bill give a few opening remarks on his legislation. Vice Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, even before the start of the term that I've heard from many voices about the challenges confronting the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs as they confront the possibility of running out of burial space or interment at the Guam Veterans Cemetery in Pidi in the next several years. And burial in a state veteran cemetery is a distinct earned honor that signifies a grateful nation's recognition of a service member's sacrifices. It provides a final resting place among fellow patriots in a serene, meticulously maintained setting, serving as a lasting tribute to their legacy and dedication. The significance and privilege of this burial goes far beyond the location. They represent a deep commitment of perpetual respect and practical benefits for the veteran and their family. Freedom is not free. It was and will be purchased with the blood and sacrifices of the brave men and women who took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend our nation. The Guam Veterans Cemetery is hallowed ground. It is the final resting place for heroes who have defended our nation through world wars and armed conflicts. This bill creates a fund that is to be used exclusively for the repairs and expansion of the Guam Veterans Cemetery. We are all aware of the damaged or improperly designed crypts and other structures throughout the cemetery, and there must not be any more delays to rectify these issues that are there. I look forward to the testimonies that will be given today and suggestions on how we can improve the bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Atta. I'd also like to recognize the presence and participation of Senator Tello Taitagui, who is with us today. Thank you, Senator. We will now begin accepting public testimony. We'll begin with you, Mr. San Agustin. Again, if you could introduce yourself and please speak closely into the microphone.
Hafa, Senator Sabrina Salas Matanane and honorable senators of the 38th Guam Legislature, My name is Joseph Agustin, the Director for the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs. I'm here to testify in regards to Bill 321-38, an act to add a new subsection 67114 to Chapter 67, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, relative to creating the Guam Veteran Cemetery Renovation and Expansion Fund. I think it doesn't, Senators, it doesn't take a veteran to really care for our cemetery or our veterans. But we, as veterans ourselves and as lawmakers, policymakers, and leaders, we do take a more serious approach to many of the shortfalls or the deficiencies that we experience in our government. The Guam Veterans Cemetery is one of those, highly visible, should be highly respected, a very solemn ground in which we have buried our heroes, our active duties, our veterans, their family members, and also their children. There are several concerns that I do have with this bill, and I will address them quite directly. With regards to the findings, I do agree that the findings, there are a lot of crypts that are dilapidated. Senators, let's be very honest to ourselves. Nothing is built to last forever. Those crypts that are built down at the cemetery or do exist down at the cemetery were built back in the 60s. Back in the 60s, you could imagine what kind of material was available for the Navy under the ownership of the Navy. What type of material was available for the Navy to contract and build a sufficient burial sites for our veterans and our military and their family. So really understanding Guam and the type of material that we have available, you know, that was it. It was whatever sand was available that they were, excavating from the ocean. It was whatever gravel that they were excavating within the Navy jurisdiction to be able to create or build a cement or put together cement to be able to build that cemetery. It is, in fact, the borders of just about every crypt down there, because of its age and the type of material used, it's evident that it's starting to come apart because the rebars that were used back then and the material that were used back then, unlike the consideration now based on the experience of the dilapidation of that cemetery, now they had pretty much concluded, and I know this for myself, that a part of the sand that they used back then is not sand that you make from the ground. It was sand that was taken from the side of the ocean, right? I know that because those were the kind of material that was used to build our home in '76 up in Dededo. These are sand that actually came from the ocean. Now they're making sand out of gravel. They're making sand out of rocks. They experienced this. They've learned from that. It's the same with the rebars. The rebars nowadays, they're focusing on ensuring that these rebars are the type that could withstand anything that has salt or anything that could prevent any type of material being put together to build something, that it's able to withstand. And I'll tell you, we still see some material nowadays. I'm not going to kid you, and you all should know this. It depends on the quality of the material that you purchase. So the cheaper the material, rebar you purchase, you could guarantee that that material is not going to last. Okay, so I could pretty much assure that that's what happened during the time when the Navy owned that cemetery. They went out and did a contract, and again, it's the kind of material there is, and that's what we're now enduring. What I like about this particular bill, even though it's got some faults in it, is that we recognize the need for funding to be able to address the faults that we're experiencing, the dilapidation, and the need to prevent further damage, but also repairs the many, many crypts that are damaged at this point due to the poor construction material that was utilized. The columbariums, Senators, just to let you know, it's mentioned on this bill, the columbariums are pretty much newly built. And so those things were built around 2009, 2008 timeframe when Mr. Opinco was then the director. He was the one that had that built in addition to the ground site over by the flagpole. Those particular columbariums are good. I don't see dilapidation. There's only one problem I saw, and that was a piece of the tile that came off, but that's something that we were able to just repair and put back in place. Otherwise, those columbariums have no deficiencies. They're all good to go. They're newly built. I could tell you, looking at the material they use, it appears that they use good material to build that particular columbariums. What concerns me with this bill is the way it's language, that there's going to be an appropriation of $1 million per year, and it seems like it just stops there for me. Where I like the idea, if I'm thinking of this right, is that if I do identify that there's a need for me to utilize that fund, then that I go to the legislature to request for that appropriation. Right now, it does not identify the funding source where that $1 million per year is going to be coming from. And I say this from a positive standpoint. I don't want funds to be placed into our appropriation when we're not ready to utilize that funds. I prefer the intent where if you need it, request for it. And the way that come about is it takes time for us to secure any type of contract, right? It takes time. So the way I foresee this is that once we identify the problem, we bring in a contractor or a consultant to kind of give us an idea how much it's going to cost for that particular project to take place, and then that's when we'll submit a request for funding based on that estimate that was given to us by a contractor or Department of Public Works. So that's where I see this to be positive. Otherwise, Senators, when we do something like this, it's something that's going to enhance the needs of the government and the people. In this particular case, it's to enhance our veteran cemetery to make sure that the place is solemn, the place looks and is upkept the way it's supposed to be and not be neglected. Not so much neglect, right, Senators? Because, me being the director right now for the past 3 years, I'm going to take every hit. But I could tell you, too, that we've came a long ways. And I urge that we continue to work together, and this is one example, that the body is, in fact, considering to help the VA state office make do of whatever funding that we could get in order to get our cemetery looking like it should. Okay? So with that, that's all I have for this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Director San Agustin. Mr. Omagun.
Test. Half a day. Good afternoon, honorable senators. My name is Stephen A. Amagin. a retired public servant for 31 years here in Guam, and retired military person, served the 3 branches of military, served 23 years, and never been to combat, but been to Afghanistan twice. I am here, but before I start, I just want to take a little pause a little bit to pray for our service members that are right now in harm's way, and also if you can pray for world peace, because we are indeed in biblical times. I submitted my written testimony. It took me, I woke up early this morning just to write it. Just excuse my grammar in that 8-page testimony that I submitted, because, you know, it's my excuse that I am ESL, okay? English my second language. I am here with, not really too sure if I should support this legislation. Okay? Before I commit in supporting this bill, how much do we have in the preceding special funds already codified in Title 10? Guam Code Annotated, Chapter 67, and that's the Veteran Cemetery Trust Funds, and 67-109, and the Veterans Affairs Fund. If you look at the Veteran Cemetery Trust Fund, and the letter B of the section of the law, it says, any money paid by the federal government to Guam in connection with the use of the cemetery shall be deposited in the Veteran Cemetery Trust Fund, and it's highlighted in red, used for the maintenance of the cemetery. You know, I'm not really too good in math, but even with the rainy day fund, since the inception of the rainy day fund, we already invested close to $125 million in the rainy day fund. So I'm curious how much money we have in that fund. And Veterans Affairs Fund under Section C, right? It says right there, the Veterans Affairs Officer shall be the administrator of the fund and may issue warrants of expenditures pursuant to 6106 of this chapter, and shall maintain a record of all donations and expenditures. If you guys take a look at the bottom, it says under 5 GCA subsection 22408, it states right there that you may accept donations of property from any individual or organization on behalf of the government of Guam. What that letter states is a company will donate to the government of Guam, quoting this section. It's going to give it to the agency, and the agency will give the authority for the whoever's the director to spend that money for whatever purpose that the big company is going to donate, especially the 4% BPT that they're getting now. But you know, is that the donations portion, how much donations that have we received from from big businesses? Probably we can account for that, and if not, then probably we can also ask them to donate, because they have that law that governs them, and they can use it for a tax break. This bill, if passed, it mandates the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs to include in their annual budget to request $1 million. That's going to be hard. This bill states that funding depends on the appropriation of the Guam legislature, and if not available to afford the funding, that the Office of Finance and Budget, which is under the Guam legislature, shall publish a statement on its website explaining the reasons for its action. So that's a scapegoat. If they cannot provide the funding, they're going to use the Office of Finance Budget to justify why they cannot fund the $1 million. I feel sorry for them, because that should be discussed during the budget process. So this simply shows for 10 years, the funding is not guaranteed, thus equate to unfunded mandates. I'm not sure if you guys agree with me. Foreseeable financial shortfalls that may be possible due to fiscal year 2026, suspension of the general fund reserves, commonly known as the rainy day fund, 2% of the total operating budget. It was suspended in 2026, right, to help the BPT, reduction of the BPT. If you guys take a look at it, ladies and gentlemen, the small business owners that are already enjoying the 3% BPT exceptions that they have under the Dave Santos Act are not really being affected by the 4% BPT. Okay? Suspended in fiscal year 2026 for the amount of $18,987,834, amount that will be added to fiscal year 2027 budget. But let me pause at this. This weekend, there was an article in the paper saying that $25 million was awarded or you guys approved the $25 million for typhoons in Laco, right? And $17 million of that was from the rainy day fund. And it was quoted in the paper that the $10 million is available in the coffers. I'm not sure what coffers they're talking about. Is that the general fund? Because if you look at the justification, the usage of the rainy day fund, one of the requirement in that is has to be used during an emergency, right? And to use the money for if you have shortfalls in the budgetary process that you guys may have. And lastly, is to be used to pay down the debts. You guys can quote me if I'm wrong, but to pay down the debts. So the $10 million, I hope that we're not going to take a look at that as a source of funding for this bill, because we have to justify why we cannot return the $10 million back into the rainy day fund based on that justification of withdrawing the rainy day fund to satisfy the $25 million that was allocated for typhoons in Laco. Fiscal year 2026, an estimated $40 million less collection from the business privilege tax, and an additional estimated $40 million less BPT collection to be in compliance with the budget law to lower the BPT to 4%. That itself, Government of Guam will see about $58 million, right? Shortfall, not to include the actual cost of the Trump Tax Act. That placed Guam employees of fear of furlough in 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, I was there. I have to explain to my fellow co-workers the possibility of the furlough. And you guys were there. Such fear was prevented in the passage of the 5% BPT increase. It was overlooked until later on when revenue was dwindling down, that we need to bring it back down. But through the whole time, we're enjoying the tourism industry. We never bother about requesting for the decrease of the BPT. In addition to possible shortfalls, compounded in the equation is a total of $92 million, okay, rounded off, of debt service continuing obligation. Added the $58 million, that equates to about $151 million that our taxpayers have to pay every year. That's not a piece of cake that we're just gonna dish out every year for taxpayers, because what's gonna happen is we pay it, and guess who's gonna pay for it? The taxpayers. Fiscal year 2026 budget for the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs is $1.2 million, right? For fiscal year 2027, 1.246. I'm not sure if they increased it, but if this bill passes, because I know there's no date on the last portion of the bill that it will state that the bill will be effected upon enactment or whatever the effect. There's no projected date when this bill is going to be implemented. So if the bill passes this year or today or whatever next time, they're going to have to submit a supplemental budget to request for $1 million. And I know where we're going to get that. Go for a relocation to the new location. How much is the current lease at the old place? Will that be considered savings? And can that be used to supplement the maintenance of the cemetery? Yes, you guys identified dilapidated burial site and all that, but you have to differentiate what money we can use. Under the National Cemetery Administration, the government of Guam can actually spend money, their own money, for expansion or improvement of the cemetery, and it can be reimbursed by a grant, or you guys can request for a grant. But the daily maintenance of the Guam Veteran Cemetery falls under government of Guam. You cannot use the National Cemetery Administration grant for that. Following suggestions from a common person like me out in the streets. 1, find out how much money was used from the $35 million that was appropriated for healthcare center in accordance with Guam Code Annotated Title 12, Chapter 83. Fiscal year 2022 Budget Law 3654. A fund was appropriated and sitting idle in the form of investments like bonds, stocks, time certificates of deposit, unlock the fund like what they did to the Senate, $7 million, and appropriate $20 million to GOVA as a capital improvement project, if it's possible, with the provision that GOVA is only allowed $1 million per year for Guam Veteran Cemetery maintenance purposes and annual expenditures to be included in their annual citizen-centric report that's supposed to be submitted by every agency, I think August or July of every year, that will tell the people of Guam how they're spending our money. Fiscal year budget 2026 that appropriate $16 million from the net unobligated fiscal year 2025. If possible, since Simon Sanchez is yet to be realized since 2013, and when the pending protests, Guam can use some of the funding to at least hire the required qualified GOVA classified maintenance personnel. This will provide continuity and not to be subjected to the mercy of the Guam legislature appropriation, which also depends on the money that's available. 3, request for the remaining amount, Income Tax Refund Efficiency Fund Trust Act of 2002. Right, there's money in there, I believe. It says right there in the, under A, it says the trust, 51-101 says the trust funds interest and investment earnings. We're in the business of making money. Shall be subject to legislative appropriation and shall be expended exclusively for the purposes set forth under 5103 of this act. The deposits made to the trust funds, here's how much money we have there, since the money that we're using to pay for income tax right now is because of the EITC that's being reimbursed by the federal government, and it's a court-mandated payment for our taxpayers. Be invested to or reinvested into interest-bearing instruments, United States Treasury notes, investment grades, and insured corporate notes, and other like instruments which are readily convertible to cash, needed to pay income tax refund. One thing that I don't see on the budget bill, you know, I'm retired, I have all times, you know, I do my own finances at home, but nothing in the portion of the budget bill that actually identify additional revenues from the investments. How much money are we gaining from the people's money that's sitting in the bank? I was just watching a TV show today, says the government's supposed to provide services for the people, not let the money sit in the bank. 4, request for any amount an income tax refund reserve fund, that's another fund. 5, any amount identified above will not be an added burden to our taxpayers, only if the most common sense approach is to hire the required classified maintenance personnel or appropriate any actual amount that may equate to $10 million for CIP. Any amendment to 10 GCA Chapter 67 to other appropriate section to allow GOVA hire the required number of qualified classified maintenance personnel. 6, allow GOVA to increase the minimum purchases without the bidding process to $500,000 per fiscal year. I was looking at some of the budget bills that you guys allowed a certain agency to move their threshold to $500,000. That's the biggest problem that we have in Guam, is that $25,000, I believe that only that we can go out, get 3 quotations for certain projects. But can you imagine if you raise the $500,000 for GOVA, the $1 million, they can do a lot with that $500,000 in 1 year. GOVA be exempted from the 7. GOVA be exempted from the transfer authority of the governor of Guam. 15%, since I've been reading the budget law. My understanding is 15% transfer authority is considered a reserve fund. Correct me if I'm wrong. That any agency that's affected by the transfer authority, 15% of their budget is frozen until almost like July or August of a fiscal year. And then if that money is not allocated or is not transferred or reallocated, the agency has to scramble and trying to spend the money That's why you see a lot of this lapse fund, and poor directors are getting blamed for it. Creating another special fund without a secured source of funding for GOVA is a redundancy, because we already have 2 funds there. And not really addressing the pressing issues that's been plaguing GOVA. This portion, okay, I'm gonna read the, because I'm ESL, right? So I tried the chat GPT. What I did was I cut and paste the bill and have the chat GPT analyze it and provide solutions. So this is my friend stating, analysis of the proposed Guam Veteran Cemetery Renovation Expansion Fund. The bill addresses a significant and urgent issue, preserving the dignity of Guam's veterans by ensuring that the Guam Veteran Cemetery remains properly maintained, structurally sound, and capable of serving future generations of veterans and their families. The strengths of the proposal is there. I know I just want to, under number 5, areas that could be strengthened. Replace the emotional criticism with fact-based language. Statements such as, and excuses, the blame game, may be viewed as a political and could reduce bipartisan support. Suggested revision of the bill ensure that a sustained and accountable commitment to preserving and expanding the Guam Veteran Cemetery. This skips focus on solutions rather than assigning blame. It's election year, it's very common. Support the capacity claims with official data. It states right there, official cemetery capacity studies has to be made, Guam Veterans Affairs reports, independent engineering or planning assessments. Without supporting the documentation, critics may challenge the urgency of the legislation. I'm just gonna jump down to recommendation. Solutions number 1, create a comprehensive master plan, require the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs to complete a 10 to 20-year master plan that includes burial capacity, expansion options, infrastructure assessments, cost estimates, federal funding opportunities, National Cemetery Administration, and Guam State Clearinghouse and BSP, Bureau of Statistics and Planning and Research, and Kwashu can help with that. 2, solutions, establish Veteran Cemetery Advisory Group, include representatives from Veterans Organization, Gold Star families, engineers and planners, Guam Office of the Veterans Affairs. This ensures stakeholders' involvement and public trust. Solution number 3, require annual public reporting, mandate an annual report detailing fund balance, project completed, remaining cemetery capacity, expansion progress, future funding needs. You can cover that as a citizen-centric report. All we need to do is to have Office of Public Accountability come up with a unified CCR for the whole government of Guam. If you look at the CCRs, they got different type of format for the CCRs. That should be mandated to all agencies. Solution 4, create a federal grant task force. We don't really need that. We have a lot of experts. The Guam State Clearinghouse, BSP, those guys are good grant writers. We can make sure that we use them to their full capacity. Solution 5, protect funding from diversion. I think I mentioned that on top, right? Protect them from the transfer authority. Add language-specific money deposited to the fund shall not be transferred, borrowed, or used for the purposes unrelated to the veteran cemetery. This guarantees that appropriate funds remains dedicated to my fellow veterans. Okay, I'm almost done, guys. Persuasive summary of my inquiry. The Guam Veteran Cemetery is more than a burial ground. It is a lasting symbol of Guam's gratitude to the men and women who served our nation. That's also my future home. With aging infrastructure, limited burial capacity, and years of deferred improvements, the need for action is immediate, not only during election years. Establishing a dedicated renovation and expansion fund provides a practical and accountable path forward. By combining sustained local funding, aggressive pursuit of federal assistance, BSP, Guam State Clearinghouse, our grant experts, Gura, former Senator Esteves is here. I know he's good at finding grants, transparent reporting, and long-term planning. Guam can ensure that every veteran receives the honorable and dignified final resting place, my home, they have earned through their service and sacrifice. In conclusion, I am in support of any legislation that will help maintain Guam Veteran Cemetery with identified funding. And without any identified funding, it's leading to more unfunded mandates. Empty promises, have we seen a lot of that? Like the Public Safety Facility Construction Act of 2005. Under Guam Code Annotated, Title 5, Chapter 59, that's supposed to build the Guam Police Headquarters. But, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my, I know it's very long, it's an 8-page, I kind of took short jump on some of those, so you guys can read it. And excuse my, the way I wrote it, I stayed up, I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning just to write that because my friend Johnny invited me to this public hearing, and luckily that he invited me, that's why I'm here. And thank you for what you guys have been doing to our island, and make sure that we do everything for all the people, not just a selected few. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Your testimony will be included in the committee report for all those who would like to read it in its entirety. Mr. Berdalio.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Senator Matanane, Senator Gumataotao, Vice Speaker Senator Adam, Senator Duenas, Senator Terlahi, and Senator Tadigui. My name is Fred E. Berdalio Jr. I'm testifying as a citizen, but I'm a military veteran. I served in the Marine Corps, the Army Reserves, and the Navy Reserves. And I was the former director of Guam Veterans Affairs Office. In 2019, in January, I was appointed by Governor Lujan as the executive director there. And I've had some conversations with Vice Speaker Ada, as I was the director there when it came down to some of the challenges over at the cemetery. I've also had talks with the late deceased defunct si John Umpinko, which Jose San Agustin had indicated. And John was so smart and so bright. He was successful in applying for this Veterans Administration grant program, $3.2 million. This was back in 2013. And I had a real good talk with John because one of the first things I mentioned to him is the cemetery where it's located at is down on the bottom of a hill. Most cemeteries aren't built downhill. They're built up above ground, on flat areas. So the challenges we were having at the cemetery where whenever it rains hard, the runoff goes down Nimitz Hill, goes down into the ground of that cemetery, and it creates that challenge. But John was, he was more than willing to assist. And he said to me that he could help out in any way because these grants are offered annually. Every July 1st, there will be a deadline to submit a grant for expansion purposes, right? And John had told me, although this was 2019 and he had 40% of it completed in 2014, he said, just to stay ahead, just in case, because the cemetery not only is used for just veterans, I think we're the only ones that also allow the spouses of a veteran to be buried too. And that creates a lot of stuff because, say the veteran doesn't pass away, but the spouse passes away, the spouse can get buried over there at that cemetery. So there was sometimes some conversation about maybe, do you want to not have spouses buried there? And I think we've had that practice. I'll go along with what all the previous directors have had. We'll allow our spouse to be buried there at the cemetery. I don't think anyone wants to go there and say, just to slow it down, to make sure we don't run out of space. But, this begins to talk, which is good, Senator Ada, about proposing this bill because it creates this opportunity for discussion and taking a look at funding, funding opportunities and what we can do. And see, it's an obligation, from my opinion, of the federal government to take care of the cemeteries that we have here on Guam, that our veterans are here. That's an obligation to the federal government. I don't think I've ever heard, despite hearing from a former director of veterans saying that there was one time it was mentioned, the one who took over from me indicated that because there was some inspections and it wasn't mitigated, that the federal government suspended Guam from having applied for this Veterans Administration cemetery grant. That prompted me to ask, well, I want the name of this federal official, because Guam was never suspended. We can apply for this this Veterans Administration grant, and it could be approved. A case just needs to be made by the grant writers who will write out this grant. And the amount of money that the Veterans Administration doles out can go anywhere from $60 million to $130 million. Now, John successfully got $3.28 million. Now, I haven't been with Jose. I haven't been in the loop in terms of information of what Jose San Agustin has on what Tim Uggan may have managed to do on getting a grant approved, and where are they at with that. But I think that should be something that should be a focus too, right? Where are we at with that grant? Because if we get a federal grant, and let's say the U.S. government says, well, the Guam officials just need to talk to us and communicate with us, then that's money that the federal government will spend on the cemetery versus us having to identify local source of funding to fund, the expansion of the cemetery down in PD, or for that matter, have to probably find maybe another location, because we have to pre-plan ahead, because there's a lot of veterans. This island, that's what it's known for. The large amount of patriotism, a lot of individuals who, right now, every generation are joining the military, and they're going to be eligible as Guam is going to be their home. So that's when I wanted to provide some input on that. And as Amaguin, Steve indicated, there are some accounts here, in the funds that are listed on local public legislation. The Veterans Cemetery Trust Fund, I believe that's the one. It's a non-appropriate fund, and it's for reimbursement of any work that's done at the cemetery. So when we had a backhoe operator, come over and we use the backhoe for that, we can be reimbursed. We can make that payment through the Cemetery Trust Fund. When I took over, all these funds were under the Military Affairs, and I believe it was Roger Leon Guerrero General who had that, because there were some issues about accountability. But when I took over, it was easy, because the Bank of Hawaii, where this Veteran Trust Fund, they have statements, right? So they'll know the deposits and the withdrawals. And we also had our AO, or Administrative Officer, keep account of what we're spending with this Veterans Cemetery Trust Fund. Now, it's unusual too, because as Steve Amaguin indicated, the Veterans Affairs Fund, that you can solicit and you can use donations, for this Veterans Affairs Fund. In government, we're not allowed to solicit, right? And that's more aligned when you're looking at nonprofit organizations. But to have this under public law that said we were allowed to solicit, right? And this is where the Veterans Commission comes into, about that, where they have in terms of their sort of role in playing and accountability of where we're spending this money. Because the conversation's been out, are we using it is Jose, or every director using it toward improvements at the cemetery? Well, I'll just let you know this, is that when I was director of the Veterans, the Veterans Commission chairman said he didn't want anything to do to have any hands on any funds that the Guam Veterans Affairs Office had. Why? Because the chairman of the Veterans Commission isn't appointed by anyone, doesn't go through any confirmation process. So it's not like a policy board. I was appointed by the governor So I have to be accountable for the funds, like Jose has to be accountable for the funds that comes. But the Veterans Commission chairman is just selected by a whole consortium of different nonprofit organizations, not appointed, not confirmed by any legislature. So Bill Cundiff was the one who said to me, he used to sign off and approve whatever Jose San Agustin wanted to do when I took over from Jose, and Jose probably from the previous director, but they didn't want any hands on to that. So because again, the Veterans Commission is not a policy board. They're not appointed by the governor or appointed by the legislature in that side. So what I just want to say, just in brief here, just is that it's good that this bill was brought forward because it makes us think about the cemetery and the challenges it has, and the Veterans Cemetery and PD isn't the only one too. The Guam Veterans Affairs also has that military cemetery over by Auto Spot over there, right? And that location there, I've highlighted there that there's some German prisoners that are buried there. So when individuals ask me, is that a true sort of like U.S. veteran cemetery? When you have German prisoners there, that doesn't make it a U.S. veteran cemetery. It was really a Navy military cemetery. That's another discussion to have when people are looking at that, because, you know, we still need to take care of that cemetery too, because it's under the auspices of the Guam Veterans Affairs Office. And that concludes my testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, former Director Bernalio. Mr. Chris Flores.
Hafaday and good afternoon, Senator Sabrina Salas Matanane, the chair. My name is Christopher Camacho Flores. I'm a retired U.S. Army captain, military police, and I'm here to give testimony. I am not in support of this bill. This bill is half-cocked, as we say in the Army. Like my friend, fellow veteran Steve said, there's no identification that's solid for a funding source. So we're really just wasting our time testifying here, because we're testifying of a bill that really doesn't have the muster to make it come to fruition. So, you know, you're talking to a lot of professionals here. All these veterans are professional. They're highly trained professionals. Yet you bring us down here to provide testimony on a public hearing on a bill, and the funds are not guaranteed. And you know, it really offends me as a veteran when I look at this bill in the preamble of it, and it states, the Guam Veteran Cemetery has been plagued, I hate that word, with numerous problems and setbacks that include the lack of regular maintenance and grounds upkeep. I look at you guys up there sitting. When was the last time you guys go down there and just spend a day down there with the maintenance crew and see actually what they do every day? Instead of just showing up there on Memorial Day, walking around with your fancy clothes and shaking people's hands, shaking our hands, and thinking that our world is fine. Our world is not fine. We have a lot of hidden scars here. Okay, I may not have a battle scar on me, but I have battle scars in my heart. And when you start messing around with us veterans, bringing us down here to entertain a bill that, you know, is half-cocked, I really get upset. And my wife told me to, you know, be calm and be nice, but that's not my nature. I worked for a lot of generals that told me, Chris, the day that you stop loving what you're doing, you need to go do something else once you're retired, because in a retirement state, I can go anywhere and work anywhere. I'm not bound by nobody. I'm not bound by this administration. I'm not bound by nobody. It's sad to say that, you know, I'm a Republican. The founder of the Republican Party, former Governor Carlos Camacho, who I have high respect for, because I was just a kid growing up when my mom said, hey, we got to go campaign for your uncle. But it bothers me when I see a Republican president, a Republican Senate in the Congress, a Republican House, a Republican Congress representative for our island, and a majority of Republican senators here in the People's House, which I really don't think this is the People's House, because I don't know how many times I come down here and give testimony, and it looks like it just goes in one ear and out the other when I talk to you folks. And it always comes down to funding and staffing personnel. You guys give a lot of money away. And what really bothers me is you gave $11 million to the airline industry, and what have we gained from it? Nothing. We had a bad return on investment on that $11 million. A bad return on investment. That $11 million could have cleaned up our parks, our veteran cemetery, maybe hired a few people. But you know the bottom line, you know what the veteran cemetery needs really? Is for Joe to hire a PC3 or a PC4 so he can go after those grants that's available out there. You know, I work at the Guam State Clearinghouse, and I see those kids in there. I call them kids because I could be their fathers. But they're heavy on writing grants, and they get a lot of grants for Gulf Guam. Okay? And man, I applaud them. But that's what the Guam Veteran Cemetery needs, is they need a grant writer so they can go after those federal grants and not have to come here and beg for pennies. And yet you offer $1 million, and what are we don't even know where the million's going to come from. You guys just said that last week the sky was falling, we got to freeze hiring, you know. You guys reduced the BPT from 5 to 4.5, now it's going to go into 4. You gave a big tax break for the big businesses. We still haven't seen the prices go down because you said the BPT is going to cause that. It's going to cause the prices to go down and that the shoppers are going to benefit from it. I'm glad I shop in the commissary because I see the prices go down there when they have a lot of big sales. They have sales outside, but it doesn't match to the commissary. And what really bothers me a lot is where it says, government of Guam has failed. You know what that tells me? The director of GOVA has failed, and I don't see him as a failure. I'm sorry. He's you know, you don't retire in the military with a high rank being a failure. And Joe has every right to contest this language in here, but he didn't, but I'm going to contest it. That he has failed to both secure sufficient federal funds. Well, that's out of his control. He doesn't have a grant writer. But you guys can change effect of that and change his staffing pattern and let him have a grant writer, PC3 or PC4. And commit to local funding, which again, he has to beg, borrow, or I don't want to say steal because that's unethical. The CHAPA has been out of commission for 16 years in the Republican Party, but this administration got it back up to par. Now it's being used. Like I said, I'm a Republican. I didn't believe in the Tenorio Ada team, but, you know, further on in the bill it states, this bill states that funding depends on the appropriation of the Guam. I don't know what part of Guam that is, but it says appropriation of the Guam, and if not able to afford the funding, that the statement on its website, whatever, official of finance and budget. But where it says, the bill states that funding depends, hell, I'm 68 years old, I'm glad I don't have depends yet, but, you know, I don't know what that means. And then further on down it says, I want to talk about that. And then let me see my other notes here. I think that's the last of it. So I would just say, you know, Steve touched on this, that Simon Sanchez High School has been in the works since 2013. That was under the Calvo administration. 2018 to present, the Lungar administration has at least moved that football field, or moved the football down the field a little bit. We're still not there yet because we have an AG that is just holding on to a lot of paperwork. I would say in closing, I hope you guys are listening, but you know, we're just spinning our wheels here, man. And as a veteran, as a professional, all these veterans that are professionals here, we don't like to spin our wheels. We may gripe a lot and complain a lot, but we know what it takes to make things happen. And having the funds not having the funds to do or make anything happen, that's already a killer. And in closing, I'd just like to say, take this bill and really work on it. Find the funding source instead of playing the guessing game every year that the GOVA director, whoever it's going to be, because it's going to be a new GOVA director once the new administration sits down, coming in here and asking for $1 million whether we don't even know where it's coming from. It's just sad. It's just so sad that I had to take leave and come down here and waste my time down here for almost an hour giving testimony for something that is half-cooked, half-baked, doesn't have no meat and potatoes. It's got nothing but garlic on it. Just a bad taste in my mouth. And with that, please come up with a better bill. I would really appreciate it as a veteran, and I know that my fellow veterans will appreciate it. And I'm sorry if I offended anybody up there, but I don't sugarcoat nothing, especially in this house, because I demand action from you guys just as you demand action from us. It works both ways. I don't work for you guys. You guys work for us. But a lot of times you guys forget that. You guys think you work for us. Did I say that right? No, yeah, see, okay, anyway, that concludes my testimony. Thank you, and may you all have a blessed day.
Thank you, Mr. Flores. Mr. Mofnes?
Thank you, Madam Chair, member of the 38th Guam Legislature. My name is Joseph P. Mofnes. I'm here to testify in reference to this bill in front of us.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mofnes, can you move the microphone down? Yeah.
Is it okay now?
Better.
Or what?
There.
Much better?
It's better,
Thank you,
yes.
ma'am. Anyway, my name is Joseph P. Mofnes again. I work directly with the director of GOVA. Since being detailed down to the office of GOVA, I've seen a lot of improvement. Let me just say this, that there's previous directors that have been assigned to GOVA, but none that I have seen what Director San Agustin has done on the previous years and up to now. A good example is that, you know, right after Typhoon, this past Typhoon, whatever it is, Sankola, whatever it is, the East Agana Cemetery, without even giving a green light, we went ahead and cleaned that facility up there. The only obstacle that happened there was that a lot of those debris that we put on the site was being also piled up with the business across the street, next to it. So that's one example that Director San Agustin, has took it upon himself. The other thing, just previous directors, if you had seen in the past, senators, I urge you to come down and see what have been done in the previous years compared to the previous directors. And I say this because I've seen it happen during my assignment down there with Director San Agustin. We even work on Saturdays, without any cost. Now, those volunteers that are coming in on Saturdays, we did not ask for that volunteer. They came and asked Director San Agustin, what can they do? And with that being said, we went ahead, the director went ahead and, go ahead and accept this. The only problem, not the problem, but we spend a lot of money for, feeding these guys that are coming in, especially from the military side of the house. The other thing also is that I discussed this with the director that we really need to have a PC1, I guess, whatever, for a person to do a write-up grant for us, because right now, the director, myself, and the others are doing all this, trying to write out a grant. And let me say this on behalf of him, that he does a lot of write-up for all these grants that are being put out for the cemetery and all that. And I've seen that because I haven't seen any of the previous director done that, maybe because I wasn't there. But, I would just have to say that there's a lot of things that is being put out there, like Steve said, we need to do this, we need to do a recommendation and all that. It's very easy to say that, but when it comes to doing it, it's kind of hard because we need to have people to do that. We have to do all this research and come up with a good solution as to how we're going to do this, and keeping the accountability of all the funding that is coming in and going out and so forth. And I know that the director is doing a good job on that because I've seen it happen. I don't know, he's been there for how many years, Joe? 3 years, and I've never seen anybody come to me and say, we need to replace this director as compared to the other director. Don't get me wrong, maybe the other directors are good as well, but from the previous director, they come and say, maybe we need to replace that director with somebody else. And the reason why I'm saying that is not because I'm down there, it's because I've seen this guy happen. He even go out there and do lawn mowing himself. I would have liked to do that, but I just got my knee surgery, so I can't do that. But we do a lot of stuff down there. And for everybody and anybody that wants to come down and see what's happening down there with the number of people that we have, we do our very best to make sure that we keep the cemetery as much as we can. The only problem there that we did a lot of painting, and then some of these guys that are coming in to, I guess, do their last whatever, they don't respect the place. We just paint the sidewalk, and then they just drive up there, and with all that mud, and a day later we have to have that thing water blast so that it looks better. So all we're asking is to respect what we are doing down there in the cemetery, and it's not like the cemetery from the outside. Now with this funding that you guys, or senators, that you guys are appropriating, if this become reality, it will be great. But for the director to submit on his budget request $1 million every year, how guarantee is that he's going to get that $1 million once he submit his budget request? If it's a guarantee, then the bill might be okay. But like what Chris was saying, half-cock, I don't like to use the acronym half-cock, but I also retired from the Army like he was. I don't know about the Marines, Air Force. I don't really care about that either. But, but that's how it is. So all I'm saying is, I don't know whether this bill is appropriated to say right now up front, but if you can guarantee that we can get this $10 million for 10 years, then it will be a good bill. Other than that, then we need to go back to the drawing board and see what we can do to resolve this, and not come out and argue when it comes to budget hearing and say, are you sure you're going to use this $1 million? Are you sure you're going to do transparency? Are you sure you're going to give me all the expenditure that you did for the $100 million, for the $1 million? If that is what it is, then, I will go ahead and support the bill. Other than that, I kind of put a negative on that first until you guarantee that, because sometimes we come here and then all of a sudden we backtrack because, something has to kick in. But like I said, senators, I urge you really to see what we're doing down in the cemetery, because I would say maybe 200% improvement from the previous directors. and I say that because my office is down at the cemetery, and there's 3 families that came from Off Island for the last memorial service, and I echo this to the director, Agustin, that came and asked me who was the director, and he was not in at the time. But they just came to acknowledge how what a difference it is from 5 years ago to 6 years ago, because it was very easy to find their loved one where they were buried, and it was really different from the previous. And then, you know, on the side, right by Marine Corps Drive, the director is really putting up alignment on all those ground there, and that was another comment that one of these off-island people came in and said that it was really different, and they just want to say, you know, to acknowledge what a difference it is. So, you know, and when you hear people coming in from off-island saying it's well-maintained as from the previous years, then that means that I guess the director is doing a good job. I mean, so with that in mind, I just like to say this, that if this bill becomes reality, I just hope that you guys will go ahead and give the director, whoever the director is, if Director San Agustin is going to be still there for the next 10 years, that's fine. But I hope that when you pass this bill, that the $1 million is not going to be questioned, it's not going to go into all this argument when we come to testify on behalf of this. So with that, that concludes my testimony. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Mofnes. We will now open it up to my colleagues for questions to the panel, and we'll begin with the author of this bill, Bill 321, Senator Vice Speaker Tony Ada.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everyone for coming down this afternoon to testify on this piece of legislation. Director San Agustin, thank you for giving your testimony as well. In the past, you said you were director there when?
I started May 2023.
2023. How much of ARP funding did you request from the governor's office?
If I recall, it was $860,000, and that was for the renovation of the 3 buildings down at the cemetery, right, which has been completed.
And have you requested any additional ARP funding from the governor's office?
No, I didn't.
Knowing that $70 million is going to be taken away from the Manila project?
No, I didn't.
Or do you plan to put in any requests for additional funding?
Well, I you know, if you could just clarify what funding we're talking about, what additional funding are you implying?
Are you planning to request from the governor's office any additional ARP funding to be utilized down at the Guam Veterans Cemetery for improvements and equipment?
Are we talking the ARP that's going to expire December of this year?
Yes.
If that's...
Because it's been placed on, you know, in the media that about $70 million will be allocated elsewhere and not for that project any longer. So would you put in a request for that?
Well, you know, that's a good question, Senator, because definitely I probably could use $600,000 for the crypt located up on the hill that has, you know, has been, apparently there's a crack there through the earth movement, right? Mm-hmm. There is a quotation that DPW had provided me a couple months ago, and supposedly that was kind of the bracket that will cost for that repairs. In saying that, I'm also abdomen in working with the National Cemetery Administration to assist us in providing us funding for, you know, to identify it as an improvement fund for that particular project as well. So, you know, I was supposed to head out to Georgia this August, and I'm hopeful that I could communicate with them if within the funding of the VA National Cemetery Administration, if that particular issue that's been there for quite some time. Would that fall under an improvement project? Because what I want to do is kind of hold partnership with the federal VA for them to be able to fund, these issues instead of it coming out of our funding that already has been identified from the governor as to what they're going to use it for, or just more so, we have a good relationship with the federal VA, and I want to continue that relationship. I have confidence that they'll be able to buy in to say, yeah, that appears to be an improvement, right? Because it wasn't caused by our neglect, but it was so much caused by a natural event. The reason why I say this is because they came up with a $3 million pre-application grant for the East Gatnia. And just to let you know, I went back just 2 weeks ago, and I replied back to them that we are not able to meet the mandate of 30 September to be able to put together a design and complete that design, simply because it was April when they came out with the offer that funding is available for 2026, and that's leftover funding from the NCA that the other jurisdiction did not use. So apparently it became available, and they fed it to us to see if we could use it. I went after it because we definitely could use it. However, knowing the delay of the process, I decided, hey, let me just go back to the drawing board, let them know that we're not able to meet this this year, but we're hoping that they'll allow us to continue to work with putting together the scope of work, right, and the design, and then go after a consultant to kind of design the improvement plan that needs to be done at the East Agana Cemetery. So that's why I paused on this, and I'm glad Chris Flores is there. I'm not a grant writer. The thing is already the process is there. The basics of what we need to submit for an expansion grant, it's all there. The delay, Senators, is really the process. And just to let you all know, the $15 million expansion grant for the cemetery right now is on a standby. That's going to expire. That contract is that deal is going to expire by 30 September if we do not move forward. Here's what I'll tell you, and I'm being upfront. We're probably going to not make it. More likely, we're not going to make it by 30 September. Okay, and the reason for that, the contract for the consultant that was submitted by DPW is still with the AG. It's going on 2 months now. The last hearing I was here, I pleaded with y'all, if y'all can assist me, if y'all are good friends, and I don't know why we have to be friends, but we just have to be people responsible to get the job done. I've been waiting for 2 months for that contract to be signed. The consultant is on hold. Under 120 days, we're not going to finish it unless DPW or the consultant comes back and tells me we could. My consensus tells me we're not going to. In saying that, as we move forward, just because we're not able to meet that deadline in 2026, we're going to continue to go ahead and get the consultant on board, continue the design, have the National Cemetery Administration Architectural Engineering guy approve it, and by the time July comes, we're still in compliance. By the time October comes, we're then in the game because we have that design all ready to go. That's the plan.
It's great.
It's a painful process, Senators, sir, and it's a painful process, but it's what we got to do. We've done our due diligence to expedite it. It's the process that's there. It's political or not, but I'll tell you, I will respect people that are doing their job if that's what it takes for them to make sure that they review it thoroughly so that we do not fail. They review it thoroughly so halfway through the funding or through the process, it doesn't come back and bite us in the ass because we made a mistake. But that's where that's at.
So you had a $15 million grant that's already been awarded?
No, it's a pre-application grant.
It's a pre-application grant?
Yes, sir.
All right.
And so for it to be awarded, the design has to be completed by 30 September, then it'll be awarded.
All right. But you had grant writers that applied for that?
No, so that was actually originally applied by Lucy Paris and Tim
Tim
Muggen.
Muggen. So this
Yes.
is the original $9 million
That's correct.
grant that was supposedly placed already, the bank was already in the money?
No.
That the money was
There-
already in
no,
the bank?
No. And you know better than that, Senator. It's
Mis-
not one of those
Director,
things where we go to the bank and
Director,
apply for a grant and they deposit it.
I-
You need to meet those mandates, right? You need to meet those requirements, the pre-application requirements. which-
Absolutely. But what I'm saying is, those were not my words, all right? That was in the media on K57 during the vet talk, right? That the
It's all
money
news.
was already in the bank.
Senator, it's
all
all
right?
news.
Yeah,
All news.
I understand.
So let's move forward with the 50 million and work with that.
I understand.
The
And that's
15
why this
million
bill, that's why we're working with this bill, so that we can have
So-
some type of local funding for our expansion. So, you know, a lot of times, right, and, you know, it's always blamed down here that we're not giving you the people, we're not giving you the resources. But where does your funding come out from? Your funding comes out from the governor's office, am I correct?
That's correct.
All right. Do you go back to the governor's office and let them know what people do you need, what personnel, so that they can give you the personnel?
Senator, I'll tell you where the delay is at now. This is not a blame game.
Right.
Okay? We have to go to DOA. DOA makes the announcement. We tell them this is what they need. This is what we need. They make the announcement. They have to put the announcement out. They have to do the process. They have to do the vetting and all that good stuff. Don't quote me on this, but you know, likewise, in my agency, we're short of personnel. I'm assuming they're suffering the same thing because I'm understanding there's only like 3 or 4 people that kind of reviews the application.
And that's
not a blame.
No, it's not a blame game, but it's the same thing that's been said over and over again, right? Is trying to hire the personnel and trying to get the announcements out, trying to vet the people so that they can get to the different departments and agencies. And it's not happening. So when, you know, it's said that, you know, we're not giving you guys the funding, we're not giving you guys the personnel, that's not here at the legislature. We just give the funding, and then you guys move from there and work with your agencies and the different departments.
Can
Now,
I please
this
make a
bill-
comment?
I'm speaking with the
Oh,
director,
okay.
sir. Let me just finish with him, and then I can address
No, I
you.
want to piggyback on your question
Now,
to answer.
As soon as
Okay.
I'm done with him, then I can talk with you, sir. So that is what, you know, this legislation is for, right? It's so that we can find the money, start putting it away, and start making expansions or improvements that we need down at the cemetery, because that one whole section of crypts needs to be demolished, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Right? I mean, we all want the same objective. And the same objective is to make sure there's enough burial space for our veterans and their families. This is not about, you know, who's what, right or wrong. This is coming together, just trying to let's put a bill together so that we can, hey, if there's no funding source, let's find a funding source, right? And that's why we come together so that we can make these things happen. But if we don't do anything, then we're going to be in the same position we're at today 10 years from now. Still wondering where we're going to get the funding from. Still wondering if we're going to be able to get grants. But at least we can try and do what we can to ensure that we're able to put money away and start doing our own improvements. And if we get reimbursed or we get grants, even the more better, because then we can really take care of our veterans. But this is not on you, right? And many directors come and go from the Veterans Affairs. And this is what we just do to ensure that we can continue to move forward, continue to work together. It's just like the East Agana Cemetery. You know, Sergeant Major Mofnes brought that up, and I brought it up with you as well, right? We had to go and paint the cemetery for after Memorial Day. But I didn't want to bring that up. But when things are being thrown at us that, you know, maybe we should go down there and take a look, and maybe we should be, you know, I did. I went down there. My grandfather is buried at that cemetery. So naturally, you know, it's a care that we all want. Not just for ourselves, but for our children and our grandchildren, so that at least they can see where our loved ones are buried. I have a grandmother that's buried down at Guam Veterans.
Okay, I got that part.
So taking care of the cemetery is something that we all want to do. And getting this bill forward and moving it along so that we can get money into this fund is going to be beneficial for everyone.
So where's the funding source going to come from, Senator?
And that's what we're going to work with in the general fund.
And that's what they meant, half-cock.
No,
I'm not being smart,
I'm not saying,
but I'll tell you, you stay the course, because the way I see it is it's allowing me to come to the legislature and request for funding when I need it. So if and that's the way I'm putting it. If I identify a need down there that I need $1 million, or I could use 600,000, contractor get me the quotation, DPW get me the quotation, then I'll put it in. But I'll put it in to request for the next year appropriation to say I need this. Here's my quotation.
that's where you come in with your annual appropriations, right? When your annual budget.
That's a Marine version to fix it, because right now it's broken. Their version of half-cock, they're right. Okay, where's it coming from? But if we're true leaders, which is what we're saying we are, then I would think that my piece of comment this afternoon is that in the absence of identifying the funding source, comes the time between now and 10 years that whenever the new administrator, director requests, hey, I need funding, Senator, based on this bill, I need 600,000 to repair, can I get it? And that's the way I imagine this to be. I'm not a senator, was never a senator, but I think that's a smart way to go about it in the absence that no funding source is identified here.
Can I make a comment and piggyback now? Is that okay now? Because I just hear a lot of rambling right now.
You can go ahead, Mr.
Can I have
Flores.
the floor? Okay. With all due respect, Vice Speaker Ada, you should be a reporter instead of being a senator. Seriously, because what does the 70 million ARP have to do with this bill and the $1 million you guys are saying you're going to provide for us 10 years in a row? What does the 70 million ARP has to do with that? The governor has the sole purview of spending that money, and if we lose it, we lose it. You know why? We have an AG up there that's sitting on the paperwork and how to spend that money. Now you're telling us, have we asked the governor for the 70 million on ARP funds? Why don't you ask that AG up there to release those documents, sign the documents, approve it or whatever, so we can move on and spend that money? And then the other thing you're saying is, you're saying here that we're going to come together here to find the money. That's not my job.
Well, you're
I'm
here
sorry.
testifying,
My
sir.
job is you tell me where's the money at, and I have the money, then I can go spend it. I can go use it. You're telling him to, when was the last time he asked the governor to hire people? You just put last week, there's a hiring, you want a hiring freeze on this Gov Guam and LTAs, and suspend the pay raises, suspend the merit bonus pays.
No, that's not true.
Okay,
It doesn't suspend the merit
Well, Patty
bonus.
was calling you on the Patty show
And
after
it's
she
still not
spoke to the Lieutenant Governor to get your response, and yet you have not responded to her show. You have not even given her a courtesy call to say, I'll call you back on this date or we'll discuss it another time. Okay, so let's not mince words here.
We're not mincing words.
We're here for Bill 321. We're not here for
Exactly.
70 million ARP. Okay? Let's stick to this bill. Okay? And don't tell us that we need to tell the governor to hire who, because you just put out to freeze the hiring. Okay? Freeze the LTAs.
No, I was asking the director if he put any requests down to the governor's office for any personnel.
How are we going to do
And
that
that
when you just
$70
put
million,
up, when you're trying to put out legislation to
That
hire
$70
freeze?
million, the $70 million was part of a media release earlier this week or last week.
That we're going to lose it, correct?
They're going to move it to other projects.
Well, it may not be moved to other
So,
projects because it depends
there's-
on what that
There's
AG is doing up
projects
there
that
with
need
the
to be
paperwork.
done. There's projects that need to be done down at the cemetery that perhaps the governor can give part of that ARP money so that those projects down there can get
Again,
done
we're
and
here
rebuilt.
for the 1 million every year that he has to come back every year to testify or budget hearing to get the million. We're not here for 70 million right now, Senator. I'm sorry.
I
You're
understand
comparing,
that, but
you're trying to
no,
put
I'm
apples
not,
into a basket of oranges.
No, I'm not.
Yes,
because-
you are.
Thank you. We're
Because
going to
guys
move
are
on.
totally
We're going to
against
move
the
on
bill.
with
ARP is
questions
totally
from
separate
other
funding, sir.
senators.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Flores. Thank you, Vice Speaker. Senator Gumataotao, you're next.
You're wrong, Chelo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the panel for being with us this afternoon. I know this is not an oversight hearing, but it's a public hearing on a policy.
Thank you.
But let me begin with this. The Bureau budget is aware of the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs accepted FY 2026 grant opportunities for GU 22-06 for expansion of the Guam Veterans Cemetery in PD and GU 21-05 for improvements at the Guam Veterans Naval Cemetery in Hagåtña. GOVA is currently working with the VA National Cemetery Administration in meeting the design development milestones, particularly the completion and VA approval of final construction drawings and specifications. Mr. Director, you said at the very beginning or during your testimony that the problem is process. What this policy is attempting to do is to help set a process. With that said, if I could, and if you can, for the committee and for the people of Guam, there was a separate $3 million federal grant for the Guam Veterans Naval Cemetery in Hagåtña, which, according to your department, would cover erosion control measures, a perimeter wall, and fencing to protect the historic cemetery in East Hagåtña. Did you, or did the leadership of the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs ultimately decline the funding opportunity as the GOVA director, that being you, said last month that you would do so because you would not put, or let me make this clear, you could not put the $15.4 million, this funding opportunity, in jeopardy? Is that what you said on the record? So, I mean, help us understand, Mr. Director.
So are we talking about the expansion grant or we're talking about 321?
Mr. Director,
Are
we're
we
here
talking
to-
about 321 or the expansion grant?
I understand.
We're here for Bill
I'm
321.
hoping, Mr. Director, you can answer this question so I can get to my question
It's
about the policy.
It's a public hearing, right, for Bill 321,
Yes, sir.
which is the process in which this body is trying to implement to allow the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs to put within their appropriation every year $1 million for expansion and renovation of the Guam Veterans Cemetery.
Hey, let's go. You don't need to answer that. It's an oversight.
I'm wanting this just to get to my next question, if I can.
So in your language, Senator, you will say it's decline? In the
Oh,
federal,
no, sir.
In the federal's language,
I did not say that. This
those-
was something that you had mentioned in an oversight hearing. So please, can you please just tell us, is this what you said last month? That you did not want to jeopardize this funding source?
I said it.
Okay, which gets me to this. Now, recognizing that GOVA could receive what is basically double the amount of its annual budget for the next 10 years, what is the current capacity of your office with respect to procurement and project management experience? And would it be helpful in this policy if DPW is somehow included in the measure so that maybe future appropriations would align with a carefully crafted plan and is supported with the appropriate staff, equipment, materials, and service contracts that may be necessary to continue in supporting and maintaining the Guam Veterans Cemetery?
Senator, the relationship with DPW, myself, BBMR, the State Clearinghouse, the Governor, Lieutenant Governor, to include the consultant that we're still awaiting to put to work, has been phenomenal. It's there, right? Where I say the process, you know, if it was up to me and all those were under my control, I could expedite it based on the expertise and my urgency and need to get this grant on board. Obviously, that's not how it works. We go through a pre-application process, then we have to go and find a consultant, then the consultant has to come on board and do the design, but before they do that, you know, a contract has to be signed by the Attorney General, Department of Public Works, myself, and also the final signature on that contract is the Governor of Guam, right? So the delay of the process, it's what it is. It's out of my control.
No, so again, do you guys have the capacity today to do this type of project over the next 10 years? We're talking procurement, project management. Does your current team have
think
that
so.
today?
I think so. It's good to have a PC3, but that's the reason for the existence of the State Clearinghouse. That's, you know, as far as grant is concerned.
I'm trying to understand. So you're saying that you do have the current capability, the current capacity with procurement and project management to do this without the assistance of a outside agency like a Public Works?
The Department of Public Works has to be there because they solely are the central focal point when dealing with contracts, construction contracts. They're the focal point. So they're the ones that we get together, we work out the scope of work. They put out the scope of work to the AG for review, right? All the language is there. Once the AG says that the scope of work looks good, we now could put that scope of work out for bid, right? For the project.
Mr. Director, I understand that process.
Yeah.
I do, and I'm just trying to understand. So you're saying on the record today that you do have the capability to be able to take $1 million a year for the next 10 years. It's almost doubling your budget. And again, people are here, we're up here trying to assist. We're not even remotely trying to be adversarial to anyone in this veterans community. There's a policy that's in front of us to help to set a fund source in play to allow the construction or to make the expansion of the Veterans Cemetery. It's a state facility that we're trying to help with. So if you're saying that you have the capability, then I won't be offering up amendments to add DPW. Maybe I'll leave it there. But I'm just saying for the record that these people up here, all of us, and the input from you, we're trying to find ways to make this policy, as some of my colleagues like to say, better. And that's why I'm asking this afternoon, and I appreciate your candor. I'm not sure about all the other stuff with it, but I mean, we're here to help. So thank you for your candor, and Madam Chair, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gumataotao. Senator Dueñas.
Madam Chair, I'm perplexed too by really some of the adversarial commentary. Nothing in this bill has ever taken you to task on anything, Master Guns. I'm really kind of set back here. We're actually trying to help you. And so let me read the section of the bill. The Guam Office of Veterans Affairs shall include its annual budget and appropriation request for not less than $1 million annually. The appropriation request shall continue for not less than 10 years following the enactment of this section. Half-cocked? We're going to appropriate $1.04 billion or more this year of local general fund appropriations. I don't know what gun you're using, but if that's half-cocked, I'm going to tell you right now, that's a bazooka that's fully loaded, okay? So I got to ask you directly, Master Guns, if this was law right now, would you not make the request in your budget for the $1 million appropriation?
You're coming with me with a bazooka?
I'm answering the fact that this panel seems to talk about a gun that's half cocked. I'm telling you, this gun is fully loaded, and would you not make the request if this bill were law?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
That would be your job. So, Madam Chair, I have to address these discussion on fiscal matters. If you paid attention, and you can go back to the tape on the recent SCS meeting, the BPT is actually performing $10 million above adopted levels this fiscal year. The other issues in terms of the rainy day fund has $68 million in it. And with the replenishment of the $10 million from the recent appropriation, will be up to $78 million. We will only require $6.2 million to comply with the law to fully fund from this legislature over the last several years, fully fund. That the governor went stateside and bragged to the market that we're so strong and we're so fiscally strong that we have a rainy day fund that is now fully funded. As far as the $35 million that you talk about, I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Amaguin, because that actually, money was never put in the account. And that's what happened last fiscal year, that discussion went. But guess what? Magically, after the budget was vetoed, a bill came down to this legislature to appropriate $40 million to the hospital. Guess where that money came from, sir? The appropriation and the fund that you were just asking about. The $16.3 million, Mr. Amaguin, that you talked about, we're not going to use that fund. That's for Simon Sanchez. And we hope somebody gets their act together soon so that we can actually build a Simon Sanchez. Now, going back to this annual appropriation proposal, Director San Agustin, do you need the funds?
I can't wait to see it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. And I'll remind you, we were trying to help you also a month ago when you were here, and I believe it hasn't changed. I checked with OFB. You're lapsing $600,000 in your current appropriation. And this is why we want to set up accounts that are not commingled with a local appropriation, that are set up in a fund that's designed to repair and to provide a funding source going forward to match federal grants, to maximize federal opportunities, because we already realize, at least for now, what is true. And department administrations, the big bad wolf for every agency that's come before us, for some reason, they cannot let you hire. So to me, I would rather just take your $600,000 that was available right now and get started, because you're not going to spend it. They're not going to let you spend it. So some of us, 10 sponsors, got together and said, hey, we're tired of the local appropriation that doesn't even get used by the Veterans Affairs. Let's see if we can set up an account where $1 million appropriation every year can be put in place, at least that they will say for sure, we have money for repairs as enumerated in the bill. We have money to be able to match federal grants. We could show the federal government that we already have matching funds. And to close on this, it is Office and Finance and Budget's obligation every year, not funny money. If they can't fund it, they come up and they be honest and they be true. We can't meet this appropriation this year. So the fact is that that is the way government works, and that's the way this bill is structured. Yes, Mr. Amaguin, you got a question to me?
Yeah, so it's not really a guaranteed funding because the director has to ask for it every year, so it's not guaranteed because subject to the appropriation of the Guam legislature. Because I'm not sure if you guys are going to be here next year, right?
Somebody's going to be here.
Yeah, it might be a different group of people, may have a different mindset, or like what you guys have. And thank you for clarifying the $35 million. Now I can go to sleep.
Yeah.
And the $60 million, if how long for Simon Sanchez protest going to last?
Yeah.
Why are we setting aside that such money for a project that's not been even, it's supposed to be to payment for lease back option, right? So there's no contract. There's no lease that we have to pay back. Why are we setting aside $16 million for Simon Sanchez that has been in our dream since 2013? Use the money now, give them the $10 million, make it a CIP fund, whatever you guys will be able to do it, or give them the program coordinator, maintenance worker out of the $16 million, and probably we can improve the Guam Veterans Affairs Office. Why are we reserving money? Where's that money going to sit? Is it going to be sitting in you call that timeshare or time check deposits? Because I've been reading a lot of laws that states that we're investing money and we're getting returns, but it's not identified in every budget bill that you guys have. Where this money is coming from, how much money are people putting in a bank, and how much we're generating, and where's it going to? Every time I watch a budget hearing, somebody will say, "Oh, well, I think we have enough money. We have enough money from our returns." Let the people know exactly. Put in the budget bill. Put that in budget law. Money that's earned from all the investments, so that the people will know exactly how much money we have. Because you know that's not my money. It's the people's money. So as far as transparency is concerned, I think that would be the best thing. I want to see a budget law, a budget bill that will tell me a source of revenue from all the investments that we have. The rainy day fund, if you look at the rainy day fund law, it states that the Department of Administration director, the big money man, can get with the retirement fund where to invest that money. I know I'm retired, but why are we using the rainy day fund to invest in something for the retirement fund? People are investing money in the retirement fund. So how much really do we have in the rainy day fund? $68 million, you said, $78 million. But as far as my calculation is concerned, $125 million has been deposited in the rainy day fund, and nothing states there every budget year how much money we have in the rainy day fund. The suspension of the rainy day fund last year, just because I guess it met the threshold of what the law states. But I know this year we're going to have to put money into the rainy day fund, $18 million probably, or $19 million, probably
Negative.
more.
We need to put $6.1 million in there, and we will complete by law the set-aside appropriation. And when you say guarantee, death, taxes, and government appropriation every year, those three things are guaranteed.
Okay, but what does it say? 2% of the total operating budget is supposed to be deposited in the rainy day fund or the reserve fund.
And it's already there, and we will meet that
So
threshold.
for the next fiscal year,
2027,
how much the operating budget that we have? What's the 2%?
Thank
of
you.
that?
If we could
can
please
do a
stick to
budget
Bill
discussion down the line,
321. Thank you, Bill 321. Is it a comment on Bill 321?
Yes. Senator, you know, when you ask the hypothetical, if this law was passed, would the director have, with the $1 million? And I'm just going to say, you know, I worked for two governors, Governor Calvo and Governor Leon Guerrero. Governor Calvo was so proud with Veterans Director John Pinko when he got the $3.2 million on that expansion grant, you know, for the Veterans Center. That's why it is as it is when I took over, because John did a great job. He was very aggressive, right, when he worked for Governor Calvo. But I know how I've worked with my experience working with Governor Calvo, my experience working with Governor Leon Guerrero. A bill that comes forward just like this, without any funding source identified, the governor's not going to sign that into law.
What don't you understand about the appropriation of the general fund?
Yeah.
That you were a director before. I'm disappointed with your lack of understanding that this is an appropriation from the general fund that the director has to put in his budget.
That's it. Just the general
That's
fund.
the funding source.
That's
The
the
general
funding
fund is
source.
the
Yeah, the general
only
fund. That's what I'm
fund
saying.
other than
I don't think the
federal
governor would, because of the general fund. You can't count on the general fund.
You can't count on the general fund?
With a lot of stuff that's happening right now, You can't count on the general fund. Look, even with the BPT.
Where'd you get your appropriations at DOC?
Yeah,
Fred?
but I'm telling you,
the
can't.
The general fund.
Yeah, but you can't count because with all the agencies and all the priorities and the biggest
Madam
priority,
Chair, this is no longer a
Thank
discussion
you.
on 321.
Thank you.
It's a debate from politicians.
Senator Taitigui, you are next. Thank you, Senator Taitigui. On Bill 321.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to my colleagues that are here today, and of course those who are testifying and those especially watching from home. I'm getting some texts. You know, you've got a lot of veterans who are watching from home trying to understand this bill and what it's going to do. But first, I want to say thank you, Director San Agustin, for your professionalism by staying seated and not being coached to leave the table. That would have been very disrespectful. So, you know, thank you so much for being professional and staying here to answer our questions. Greatly appreciate that. You know, the bill calls for utilizing funds to go into a special fund, right? And as I did my research, it has like 3 different funds that are out there for the veterans. And of course, you know, Stephen, you hit it on the nose. You did your homework, and thanks to AI or ChatGPT helped you out on there. So my question is, on all those 3 funds that was talked about, do you know what the balance is in any one of those funds? Let's go to the Veterans Cemetery Trust Fund. There are 3 that were mentioned. So, Director, do you know how much are in any of those funds?
There's actually just 2 funds.
Okay.
It's the Cemetery Trust Fund and the Veterans Affairs. So for
Veterans Affairs, so there's a Veterans Affairs Fund, and then there's a Veterans Cemetery Trust Fund, correct?
That's correct.
So just 2, right?
Just 2, that's
correct.
correct.
What are the balances in there?
So for the Veterans Affairs funds, you got like $2,000.
22, okay.
For the Cemetery Trust Funds, which is the ones where we receive reimbursement, it's at $38,000.
38 and 38,000. And when funding comes in from the federal government, you know, what does it go to any of these counts at all?
It goes to the Cemetery Trust Fund.
Okay, so the first one that you.
That's correct.
The one that's showing 22. Also in the.
38, Senator.
Oh, I'm sorry.
38,000.
Okay,
is the balance.
38 is for the Veterans Affairs Fund.
No, 2,000 with the Veterans Affairs.
Okay.
The Cemetery Trust Fund
is 38.
Is 38. That's
okay.
Correct.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then, of course, when federal funds comes in, it goes into the Veterans Cemetery Trust Fund.
No, it doesn't.
It goes to the other one.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, okay. Where does it go?
So this. So that's the only non-appropriated funding source that we have. This funding that we're talking about, which is for the expansion of the Veterans Affairs for the cemetery, that funding source will end up going through the Department of Administration for their control and review of the dissemination of that funding. So this is a reimbursable grant, right? So the way it's implied is when each phase of the project is completed, right, we pay the contractor, and then we submit for the National Cemetery Administration to reimburse us what has been paid to the contractor. That's my understanding how that process works.
Okay.
It doesn't go into any fund or any bank that belongs to the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs. The Department of Administration will solely have control of that.
So it goes
funds.
to DOA. Okay.
That's correct. Yes.
So that being said, also in the budget and management report that was submitted, the fiscal note that was submitted with this bill, it said there's a section here that reads, however, the Bureau is aware of the GOFA's accepted FY 2026 grant opportunities for GU-22-06 for the expansion of the Veteran Cemetery in PD and GU-2105 for improvements of the Guam Veterans Naval Cemetery in Hagåtña. So these 2 grants are in play?
Actually, 22-05, the one for the PD cemetery, that is the one that's still in play. The other one, I went back about a week ago and indicated to the National Cemetery Administration and the Veteran Cemetery Grants Program Director that we are not able to meet the timeline for that.
That's for the naval one, right?
The naval, that's
okay,
correct,
got it.
yes.
Okay. And where are these funding? Where is this money going to be going to? DOA? Is that the DOA money you're talking about?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that being said, there are different accounts, and oh my gosh, and now we've got all these different accounts trying to consolidate. It confuses a lot of people, and money being pushed from one area to another and what it's supposed to do. I think simplicity is what really is what's needed here. But I'm just trying to understand this bill too as well. I mean, what does it mean? Does it mean that it's unfunded? Is it a, kind of good way of trying to get money to the veterans but not really giving money to the veterans scenario? But the thing is that it's trying to help. The bill is trying to help the veterans to get the cemetery up and running in a status that's dignified for our veterans that are well-deserved. That's what the bill's trying to do. However, there is the reality, and we all know it. We're not going to mince words. There's no true appropriation here. There's an avenue of an appropriation to, like, okay, let's go seek the general fund for that. But there's really no funding, unless in the budget bill that we can try and find the money. And you know what? I heard from the SES meeting that we're in a financial, even from the administration, the future for Guam financially is bright. That's what they told me, it's bright. So there might be an opportunity. We can't excuse that. So I just think that we need to be honest with everyone when it comes to how this is funding. And it's very clear the way the bill is written is that if there's an opportunity, the legislature during budget time will appropriate $1 million if it's available. It's very simple. There's no argument to that. It's very simple. I wish we could just give you $1 million and say that this, the legislature shall appropriate $1 million from the general fund to you, but the reality is that a lot of places are hurting in the government of Guam. They might say it's bright, the future is bright for us, but there's so many federal funds that have been stripped from Guam. We are not going to be getting a lot of it in public health. They're being hit with federal funds being taken away in certain projects that are desperately needed. Autism is an area that they've taken away funding there. So I think we should just all embrace, the opportunity when it comes. And this bill basically says if there's money, we're going to try and appropriate it. And it's very simple as that. And the biggest part, though, I have on this legislation is that even though we give you the money, we all know that you're having problems with staff, getting staff. And yes, getting someone to do grant writing is a great opportunity. But I think there are a lot of low-hanging fruit at the Veterans Office that we can take care of now, hopefully, and then get to where we want to be. And that is a very dignified place to lay our loved ones who've passed away, who served and gave the ultimate sacrifice to our people, our island, our home. So other than that, thank you so much, everyone, for being here and testifying. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tadigui. Senator Terlaye.
I want to thank you, Director San Agustin, Mr. Maguin, Chief Berdalio, and Mr. Flores, and of course, Mr. Mofnes. Thank you all for your very, I think, well thought out testimony. You guys are right. This bill there's no appropriation in this bill. You are absolutely correct. Don't let anybody gaslight you. There is no appropriation in this bill. You are correct that there's a huge difference between making an appropriation from the general fund or any fund. The general fund's not even mentioned in this bill, versus a bill that mandates you as a director to request a certain amount of funding. That's all it does. It says you, director, are going to come in every year and ask for $1 million. Never heard of anything like that. It's degrading, actually, and I agree with Mr. Flores' sentiment that they act like they don't understand what you're saying. You don't need a bill to request funding. There is a statute, in fact, that prohibits bills that are unfunded mandates, as some of you have mentioned. Those are prohibited. We're not supposed to be entertaining bills that don't have a funding source. You're right that you can request funding anytime you want. You should, whenever you're ready. You have. I hope they fully fund you this year. Every budget, you have the opportunity to request funds. And you were right also in pointing out that any legislature, the way this bill's written, can ignore this bill every single year. It's in there. But it can be ignored. The Budget Committee can put out a proposal of whatever they want. And the bills, this is like Legislature 101. Any legislature can ignore what the previous legislature has done, right? Unless we're in a contract or something. But laws, we can say, notwithstanding that law, we're doing this. So you guys are right in pointing that out. It's like pre-election craziness. And I'm sorry that you don't deserve that. If we're going to help the veterans, then we should just straight out find the money, make the appropriation, put it to the specific project that you need and you are asking for. And I share your frustration with the contracts being held up for your A&E so that you can proceed with the grants. That should be our priority. I agree with you that if we can get federal grants, that should be our priority. And this entire government should be working together to get those contracts done and the A&E done. And you're right. And I agree with you, but not only us, but the fiscal note on this bill, which has been provided to every senator, says the same exact thing. The fiscal note was mandated by law so that we know exactly what we're doing when we're funding or pretending to fund something. It says, although the intent is to provide the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs the means to fund capital improvements and land acquisition, and other things, the legislation only mandates that the Guam OVA include an appropriation request of not less than $1 million for the next 10 years in their annual budget submission. In its current form, the proposed legislation does not identify a specific fund source for the $1 million appropriation request, whether from the general or special fund revenue source. Also, the bill does not clearly state that the appropriation is to be deposited into the fund created, nor does it guarantee the appropriation from the Guam legislature, nor does it guarantee. And I think that's why Mr. Flores was so frustrated that we're making you guys come down here and act like you're actually getting something when not. You're getting a mandate to beg for $1 million in every budget. That's a fiscal note from BBMR, who reviewed the bill because they're mandated to do that by statute. So I just want to thank you for continuing your work I know we all agree there can be improvements to the cemetery. Let's all work together to do that. Thank you for pursuing the funding source. Let's get that done. And I agree with my colleagues on one thing, and that is DOA's slowness in helping you to get the employees that you need. You know, that also has to be improved. But please continue to pursue that federal grant, get that A&E done if you can, and I'm pretty sure my colleagues are going to, do what they can to remind the AG about what's waiting, what is at stake here, and the dignity of those buried there we are trying to uphold here on our own, in addition to the federal funds. We have always committed to this funding. So, Sidus Maasi, thank you so much for all of your work. Thank you. And to those volunteers as well. And your recommendations, Mr. Almaguin, and thank you, Sidus Maasi, to all of you.
Do you have something to say on Bill 321, Mr.
Yes,
Almaguin?
yeah, I just want to say that I just came here to testify, okay, not to be subjected to an oversight. But at the same time, if you guys read my testimony, it's not just complaining. I have solutions. So please consider the solutions, please. I spend 4 hours of my time trying to come up with something that will be able to help my fellow veterans.
I appreciate that.
I'm not here, when I testify here, I don't just identify the problems. I'm trying to find the solutions for it. So, I hope you guys consider some of those solutions that I have provided.
Yes, I did, and that's why I'm thanking you for your recommendations as well. And there's a part of the bill also that I agree with you, that it says if the legislature opts not to fund this appropriation, that they mandate you to request every year, that OFB is going to publish a statement on the website explaining the reasons for the legislature's actions. Even that, I can't understand the logic in that. OFB cannot explain why the legislature did or did not do something. That's in the mind of every single senator. You'd have to get them to say out loud why they did or did not do something, and then maybe mark it down. But yeah, that's just not making sense to me as well.
But before anything else, this is my last one. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers. And hopefully you guys enjoy your time. Spend time with the family, because tomorrow is never promised.
Yes. Happy Father's Day to you. But to Sidus Maasi for your service and for your work on this cemetery, Sidus Maasi.
Thank you, Senator Terlahi. I will allow the author to close on this bill, but just a couple of points of clarification since we do have you here. Mr. San Agustin, that $3 million grant, did you say that it was being returned? Is that what you said?
I informed the Veterans Cemetery grantor and the National Cemetery Administration that we are not able to meet the milestones that they expect us to submit this year. So instead of holding it hostage, they probably could use it to provide to another state.
Okay, so that was a yes. And the other grant that we're waiting for, it's still being reviewed by the Attorney General's office. This is the $15 million grant for the expansion?
15.6, that's correct.
Okay, and what is that drop-dead deadline that this contract has to be signed before you end up returning it?
So, the information that was shared with me by the contractor and the Department of Public Works is the consultant needs at least 120 days leeway to start the design of the architecture and engineering design for the crypts. And so we're under 120 days from 30 September. For me to confirm that they're not able to meet that deadline, I need that contract signed. The consultant has to get with DPW and myself to convince me that they're not able to meet the deadline before I proceed with saying we're not able to meet the deadline.
Okay, so it sounds like that the likelihood that this might also be returned is a very strong possibility.
Yes.
Okay. And so just in terms of me in co-sponsoring Bill 321, it was just another avenue, another way to kind of step forward to find any possible way to help the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs. I think I've proven that I've been trying to help GOVA since I first stepped into office, and I don't see any of my colleagues not wanting to help GOVA. And so again, this is one way. And I will tell you, it is disappointing, and I mentioned that during the oversight hearing, that you're returning the $3 million, and now it looks like you're going to be returning the 14 or whatever it is now to the National Cemetery Association, considering the fact that I had wrote 2 grant proposals. I know that Mr. Flores was talking about you need grant writers, but I wrote 2 grant proposals for GOVA totaling almost $20 million. But you said, never mind, I'm not going to need, I'll just go with the NCA, the National Cemetery Association grant. But now, again, it is disappointing that you're going to have to return that. And on top of that, not only were those 2 grant proposals that I wrote for you, it was going to the cemetery expansion for equipment. I know it's done. But again, as I have offered you repeatedly, if you need help, I have experience in writing bids and proposals, and I'm willing to help you. So I will now
Senator,
yes.
Since you brought that up, so when you assisted with those 2 proposed grants, right? My one concern is the timing. Why didn't this happen a year ago or 2 years ago? Second, when I went
Are you talking about me?
When I went into the website to actually submit the application, it was very difficult. It provided me a number. It didn't allow me to go into the website to submit that application. It provided me a number that tells me it's after hours. So, I don't want to take it as a frustration. I want to take every grant opportunity that is being offered. But if that was a guaranteed grant, that website should be a user-friendly. If that was a guaranteed grant, that phone number should have rang 24/7.
And the reason why I decided to help you is because I got the email, the phone call from the congressman's office because GOVA had not been responding to the emails that they had sent months prior. They got no response. And they even sent the same sort of emails to GOVA the previous year, last year, albeit I just got into office last year. But they have been trying to assist you, the congressman's office, with these federal grant opportunities that are out there. But for some reason, I was told we didn't get the email, we didn't do this, we didn't do that. And so that's why I said, let me help, whatever way that I can help to salvage whatever is left, to help. So, I don't know why you didn't get the email or Mr. Meno didn't get the email, but according to the congressman's office, they have the trail, the email trail, where they have corresponded with your agencies or sent emails to your agencies, and I was the one that were like, we need your help. And so that's where that all came from. That's where within like 5-6 hours, I wrote these 2 grant proposals, one for about $15 million, the other one for about $2 million, which I think had a very strong possibility of GOVA getting that money instead of losing this money.
So I'll say this, after November of this year, I'm hoping to see some of those programs arise in 2027.
And I hope so too.
I'm waiting for it.
If I get any emails or if I'm even still in office, again, I will help and I will work with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Ada.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the panel for coming down here to testify this afternoon. Like every piece of legislation that comes through this body, this is what public hearings are for, is to get the public input. And no bill is ever perfect when it makes it out from the doors, right? And this is where we come together, we try to make the bill better, we try to do the amendments, whatever we can to ensure that when it gets to the floor for debate, then we can have it can pass or it can fail. But I see a pattern now, and I see this pattern of, I'm not sure where you guys want, whether you want this funding or not, because it seems that all the grant fundings that come before the Guam Veterans Affairs has been returned, has not come to fruition. I see the lapsed fundings from the Guam Veterans Affairs Office. So now there's an opportunity to put $1 million aside for cemetery expansion or renovation projects, and that you guys are turning around and not wanting as well. So I'm not sure how is it more that we can help when you can't help yourself. And that is so unfortunate because there's so much potential. There was so much that could have been done with the lapsed funds. There was so much that could have been done with grants. But that may be as it may, where we don't have it. This is a funding source that could actually be useful for the future of the Guam Veterans Cemetery. Whether we appropriate $1 million or if Office of Finance and Budget says because everything is all strapped and tied and committed, we can only do 500,000 this year, then it's 500,000 that the cemetery never gotten before. And every single one of these legislators that are sitting up here has done legislation where it's not perfect, it's not the best thing going out the gate, but when we get to the public hearing and we get to the debate floor, that's where we make it better. And you know why we make it better? We make it better because of the end result. It's for the people, it's for our island. So coming before here and then just outright flat, we don't want this, we don't agree with this, you know, let's, instead of doing that, let's try to make it better. I mean, if it's something that you guys don't want, then, you know, we can put the bill aside at your request. But for me, I would rather move it forward so that when you're no longer the GOVA director, I'm no longer a senator, and neither one of my colleagues are here anymore, that the future of the Guam Veteran Cemetery could at least still have some hope that there's still funding that be put aside, some hope that it maybe I live another 10, 15 years, that I have my plot down there because we were able to renovate and expand the cemetery. That's the only end option here. There was no other goal, no other ambition, nothing. Just finding a way to source and fund an expansion or renovation projects down at the cemetery. And, you know, it's unfortunate that, you know, it was said that, you know, it's an election year. Every 2 years is an election year. So timing is never going to be perfect. Everybody is going to have that assumption that we're doing it because it's an election year. No, we're doing it because there was issues that were brought up, there was concerns brought up, so naturally we have to go back, find out what's going on, how is it doing, and by the time it gets introduced, guess what? It's an election year. So I hope that, you know, after today, we can come back, perhaps submit testimony, see how is it that you would like to make it a better bill, or you preferred, Senator, just, you know, if I would like to request that you withdraw the bill, then just say what you would like so that we would know. But again, thank you all for coming down here to testify in this bill. I truly appreciate all of you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I did just get an update from the Attorney General's office since you were mentioning the AG's office and the delay with this particular contract for the Veterans Cemetery expansion. And this is what they have to say so the public that are watching can get a full picture and a response. That they did receive on April 24th a request to expedite, but DPW did not give us the complete procurement record until May 7th. The AG approved the request to expedite on May 13th, and it was immediately assigned to AAG Assistant Attorney General David Rivera. David reviewed the file and recommended that it be returned to DPW pending additional submissions from the department on June 2nd. Just to confirm, as of today, DPW has not submitted the requested documents as outlined in that June 2nd memo. The AG's office does not have the file and is still pending DPW's resubmission to include copies of negotiation documents under tab 16, an update wage determination document, and edits on the contract language itself to satisfy federal grant requirements. We kindly ask that GOVA relay its inquiries to the governor's DPW, government's DPW, as to what is causing the delay in this project. Thank you. And I will forward that to you, Mr. San Agustin. I just received it, so I wanted to make sure that both sides of the story are getting out when people watch this oversight hearing, or not oversight, public hearing on Bill 321, which kind of took different directions. So thank you so much for appearing. We are now going to move on to the next portion of today's public hearing, Bill 329. Thank you, Mr. Malkin, Mr. Berdalio, Mr. San Agustin, Mr. Mofnes, and Mr. Flores, who left already. So if you are here to testify on Bill 329, please have a seat at the table. Bill 329 was introduced by myself, and I'll have some remarks on the bill. It is about creating more options for Guam's families, seniors, and individuals with disabilities who need support but do not need to live in a nursing home. The bill was written with input from the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority, Public Health, as well as the Mayor's Council of Guam President, PD Mayor Jesse Alec. As Guam's population continues to age, more families are finding themselves caught in the middle. Their loved one may need help with daily activities, medications, meals, transportation, or supervision, but they do not require the level of care provided in a nursing home. At the same time, many individuals with physical, intellectual, developmental, or behavioral health disabilities need supportive housing and services that allow them to live safely and independently within their communities. Unfortunately, Guam's current laws do not provide a comprehensive framework for many of these community-based care settings. Families are often left with very few choices, either caring for loved ones entirely on their own or seeking placement in more restrictive settings that may not be appropriate for their needs. Bill 329 addresses this gap by establishing Guam's first comprehensive home and community-based services network or framework. In simple terms, it creates the legal structure, licensing standards, and resident protections for a wide range of supportive living options, including assisted living residences, adult family care homes, group homes, independent living communities, adult day programs, transitional housing, service-enriched housing, and other community-based settings. One of the key differences between Bill 329 and Bill 31 is Bill 31 had a public hearing, I believe it was last year. It was introduced by my colleague, Senator Will Parkinson. Bill 31 focused primarily on assisted living by incorporating it into Guam's existing nursing home framework. Bill 329 takes a broader and more modern approach. It recognizes that assisted living is only one part of a larger continuum of care and creates a standalone framework specifically designed for home and community-based services. This legislation also builds upon the discussions and testimony received during the public hearing process on Bill 31. Stakeholders highlighted the importance of creating a system that is flexible, person-centered, and distinct from traditional nursing home regulations. Bill 329 responds to those concerns by establishing a tiered licensing structure that allows different types of community-based settings to operate under standards that are appropriate for the services they provide, while maintaining strong safeguards and protections for residents. Importantly, this bill is not just about senior citizens. It is also about expanding opportunities for individuals with disabilities to live, work, and participate in their communities while the support they need, or with the support they need. The bill aligns Guam with federal home and community-based services standards and reflects the principle that individuals should be able to receive services in the least restrictive setting appropriate to their needs. At its core, Bill 329 is about dignity, independence, and choice. It is about helping our Manumco age in place, helping individuals with disabilities live more independently, supporting caregivers and families in creating a stronger continuum of care for future generations. I look forward to hearing the testimony and working with our stakeholders for further strengthening this legislation. We will now accept public testimony, and we will begin to my right. Ladies first. You can speak first. Please speak closely into the microphone and clearly, and introduce yourself and your title.
Yes, thank you. My name is June De Leon. I'm from the University of Guam, Centers for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities Education, Research, and Service, CEDARS. So in looking at, and so that's UOG CEDARS. Looking at the bill, I was included, or our unit was included as part of the rulemaking section 7A123. We definitely appreciate being involved in this bill, and especially in the rulemaking aspect, because, you know, for us, all the values that I see, as you had reported, are we good? Okay. Right, our values that we hold, especially with the Developmental Disabilities Act and looking at individuals with disabilities. I mean, we recognize that we in Guam need to look at what is it look like for home community-based services, right? The HCBS. And so this is an opportunity to really look at that for individuals with disabilities as well as our Manamku, right? I've shared the bill with our leadership, the University of Guam, and they do appreciate being included. We at the University of Guam, of course, is your university, and we appreciate being a trusted source for our community. The concern that we have on the bill, and you know, my colleagues or my partners will maybe share a little bit more of that, is when I look at Section 7A 123, it provides the composition of the rulemaking sort of committee, right? CEDARS, my partner Guam Legal Services, and of course the stakeholders convening for this HCBS waiver program. It talks about the 180 days promulgation requirement. Then in Section 7A 125, it speaks to the director's report, and this is where, you know, I'm going to look to and defer to the Director of Public Health in their perspective about this bill. But in writing a report within 180 days that speak to the budget needed to look at funding for including, it says, rulemaking. So I guess I'm kind of confused in that you've included us in this process, which we appreciate, because at the University of Guam, CEDARS in particular, our charge is to really look at training, technical assistance, dissemination of information around individuals with disabilities, and how do we improve inclusive services for this population from birth through adulthood, right? So I appreciate that. But the question comes is, again, maybe the funding. We're not talking about Bill 321, though. We're talking about Bill 329. But this is still a cause in that maybe the director from the public health has more insights, but I don't see any specific support in funding, even in the convening of the rulemaking group, right? Or how that goes about with stakeholders, and really learning from the community, the island of Guam, or what does assistive living looks like? What is the notion of integrated community services, you know, and so forth, right? And so that will take time, 180 days. I'll defer to public health in that regards, but I'll also defer the aspect of, you know, let's think through this bill, because if there's not funding to support the time and effort to really pull it together, meaning the regulations, right, and the requirements for implementation, then I'm not sure. It also mentions that the director can request the budget for succeeding budget years. So then I'm thinking, okay, this 180 days will come about, but then does that mean he's going to request for funding for next fiscal year effective October 2027? So already a whole year has gone by. So thank you again for including your University of Guam. We appreciate this, but I have just some questions, and I've shared that about the funding aspect of it. But we're available, and we're here.
Thank you, Ms. June. We will go to Public Health now to get their testimony. Mr. Camacho.
Thank you. My name is Peter John Camacho. I'm the Acting Director for the Department of Public Health and Social Services. I am here on behalf of Director Teresa Arreola to present testimony related to the bill. And we're here, as Ms. De Leon was saying, Bill 329-38 is up for discussion. And ma'am, you read the about the testimony. Would you mind if I just skipped the and went straight down? That's a lot of, sorry. Okay, Hafaday Senator Salas Matanane and distinguished members of the 38th Guam Legislature. The Guam Department of Public Health and Social Services, DPHSS, extends its sincere appreciation to Chair Salas Matanane for her continued leadership and for the thoughtful revisions to this bill. Particularly, DPHSS recognizes and greatly appreciates incorporating a more expansive array of home and community-based services, HCBS, settings, strengthening person-centered language, and including citations to the federal regulations governing Medicaid-funded HCBS. These enhancements will better enable Guam to achieve our shared goal of improved care, quality of life, and independence for our Manamco and younger community members with disabilities. DPHSS further commends the Chair's vision in advancing a comprehensive and innovative statutory framework for HCBS on Guam. The implementation of a robust HCBS system represents a transformative step for the island, positioning Guam to modernize its long-term care continuum in a manner that prioritizes individual dignity, autonomy, and integration within the community. By expanding community-based alternatives to institutional care, this legislation has the potential to generate meaningful and lasting positive impacts, not only for individuals with disabilities and older adults, but also for families, caregivers, and the broader community. In response to the request for feedback sent to DPHSS on Thursday, June 4th, the department offers the following comments to reflect on the fiscal and administrative impact of the bill, support continued alignment with federal requirements, and to further strengthen the quality, compliance, and accessibility of HCBS across Guam. Below, we identify specific revisions that will more closely match the bill's intent and approach to compliance with federal requirements and programmatic objectives. DPHSS also proposes revisions throughout that aim to reduce administrative burden and improve access to HCBS on Guam. General comments and recommendations. Bill 329-38 COR directs the Guam Department of Public Health and Social Services to design, implement, and maintain a new regulatory and licensing framework for HCBS settings requiring rulemaking, oversight systems, and coordination with existing statutes and administrative regulations. Administratively, DPHSS suggests areas in which the bill can reduce administrative burden of the proposed regulatory structure by reducing unnecessary oversight proposed that does not align with the typical structure and intent of HCBS. Fiscally, implementation creates upfront and ongoing oversight costs that will require appropriations for support. DPHSS has concerns with the bill's current attempted application of the Medically Indigent Program, MIP, even on a temporary basis as a funding mechanism to establish or support HCBS under Bill 329-38. Without additional foundational changes to MIP, it is not a viable bridge to the Plan 915C waiver due to the fundamental misalignment in eligibility criteria and financing structure. MIP serves individuals who are ineligible for Medicaid or Medicare and meet strict income and resource thresholds. In contrast, the population eligible for HCBS under a 1915C waiver must meet Medicaid enrollment requirements. This divergence would result in coverage gaps and inequitable access that would then necessitate substantial regulatory, legislative, and administrative action to correct. Further, MIP is funded entirely through local appropriations and is subject to annual budgetary constraints, limiting its scope and causing unpredictability in availability. The MIP appropriation is typically exhausted each year, primarily to cover care in St. Dominic's Senior Care Home, and does not have funds remaining to cover new populations or settings. If the bill's intention is to open the proposed assisted living residence located on the RandCare campus before the implementation of the Medicaid 1915C HCBS waiver using MIP dollars, it is key that this proposed regulatory structure recognizes that Medicaid and MIP populations are distinct. The 1915C waiver is projected to be implemented in just a few months, making a short-term admission of primarily MIP participating individuals with an intended transition to primarily Medicaid enrolled individuals unsustainable for the intended population. The comment period for this waiver begins today, June 15th, 2026. Bill text comments. Section 1. DPHSS recommends removal of references to home health and hospice services within statutory provisions intended to establish Medicaid-funded HCBS, as these services are authorized and administered under distinct state plan authorities and are not typically considered HCBS. The current drafting of Bill 329-38 could create confusion regarding Guam's intended approach to establishing HCBS by referencing multiple Medicaid authorities, specifically subsection 1915C, 1915I, and 1915K, without delineating scope, sequences, or fiscal parameters. As written, this can suggest that Guam intends to quickly and broadly implement HCBS across multiple authorities and populations, including prior to approval of the 1915 waiver. DPHSS has deliberately pursued a phased and intentional approach through the 1915C waiver to implement and grow the program in a manner
Mr. Camacho, can you please speak closer to the microphone because you're talking with it to the side, so I can't really hear you.
Okay. As written, this can suggest that Guam intends to quickly and broadly implement HCBS across multiple authorities and populations, including prior to approval of the 1915C waiver. DPHSS has deliberately pursued a phased and intentional approach through the 1915C waiver to implement and grow the program in a manner that is data-informed, operationally viable, and achieves cost efficiencies relative to institutional care. Section 7A103, Federal HCBS requirements. Bill 329-38 currently defines federal HCBS requirements by referencing multiple Medicaid authorities, including sections 1915I and 1915K. Guam's near-term implementation strategy is to introduce HCBS through a 1915C waiver. Without additional clarification, this approach may create confusion regarding the scope and timing of HCBS implementation and could be interpreted as an intent to simultaneously pursue multiple HCBS authorities. This in turn might raise stakeholder expectations for a rapid and broad expansion of HCBS that may not be operationally or fiscally sustainable under Guam's current Medicaid structure. DPHSS recommends removing references to specific HCBS Medicaid authorities and replacing with a general definition of federal HCBS requirements. HCB settings. A definition of HCB settings when Medicaid financing is a component of the policy should not include housing because Medicaid does not cover the cost of room and board as a reimbursable service. DPHSS suggests replacing housing with residential supports. Medicaid rules and regulations clearly distinguish between services that support an individual to live in the community, for example, personal care, habilitation, and supports for activities of daily living from the underlying cost of housing itself, including rent, utilities, or food. DPHSS recommends reproving the prescriptive lists of services assigned to each setting, as person-centered planning should determine the specific services an individual needs or prefers. Alternatively, DPHSS recommends retaining the lists but adding qualifying language to clarify that they are illustrative rather than exhaustive. For example, by introducing them with phrasing such as services may include. Assisted living residents. Same as above, DPHSS suggests removing reference to housing and replace with residential supports or similar language. DPHSS also recommends removing citations to 42 U.S.C. Section 1396 NC, J, and K, because these provisions establish legal authorities for delivering HCBS, not the standards used to evaluate the quality and compliance of HCBS settings. 42 CFR Section 441.301C4, the federal HCBS settings rule, provides the appropriate and consistent framework for assessing setting quality and compliance across all HCBS authorities. Independent living residents. Independent living residents, such as an individual's or family home, are generally not subject to licensure or certification under Medicaid HCBS because they are private, non-provider controlled settings. Medicaid covers the services delivered, not the residence itself, and oversight is directed at providers rather than individual homes. Applying licensures to private residents could conflict with HCBS principles of autonomy and choice and impose unnecessary burden on individuals and families. In addition, DPHSS recommends removing individual and family homes from the posting requirement, as postings on private residences may violate HIPAA and privacy protections. Residential care residents. DPH suggests removing reference to room and board, as Medicaid cannot cover room and board in any residential setting. Supported living and transitional housing. DPHSS seeks to clarify our recurring position regarding the definition of supported living and transitional housing in Bill 329-38. In the bill text, this appears to be referencing the intended assisted living residents on the RANCare campus. This building is intended as the initial setting for the 1915C HCBS waiver, under which participants must meet an institutional level of care. For example, they would require a hospital or nursing facility level of care were it not for access to HCBS. Section 1915C, HCBS waivers do not provide Medicaid-funded services for individuals only or primarily experiencing homelessness. Thus, the current language appears to inadvertently conflate housing interventions with HCBS service delivery. Clarifying this distinction is critical to designing settings that are properly equipped for the specific needs of residents and facilitating availability of federal matching funds for HCBS. Palliative or hospice setting. DPHSS suggests removing, as these services are not considered HCBS. Palliative and/or hospice care is an optional benefit under the state plan. Section 7A 124. DPHSS has significant concerns regarding the intent and political implications of this provision as it relates to potential unintended consequences of both overextending MIP funding and the availability of Medicaid funding. As drafted, this section may be interpreted to allow existing residential settings that currently provide non-Medicaid or MIP-funded services to receive MIP funding during the transition period while signaling eventual Medicaid reimbursement. There are distinct regulatory structures around eligibility, services, and oversight of Medicaid and MIP that may not be in alignment with the intent and implementation of currently locally funded on-island settings. For example, those operated by the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, or GBWIC, and the Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disability, DISID. A stable transition to a federally compliant HCBS continuum of services and supports requires clear delineation of the scope of funding and intent. 7A125, subsection 4, DPHSS recommends adding operational costs or similar language to help ensure the report captures the full scope of resources needed to sustain facility operations, including utilities, maintenance, and ongoing building support for GovGuam operated HCBS settings. 7A126. DPHSS notes that the fees are not typically applied to individual or family homes under Medicaid HCBS, as these are private, non-provider controlled or owned settings. DPHSS recommends removing this requirement or exempting smaller residential settings owned or leased by the individual or their family. Section 25105, DPHSS suggests limiting this requirement to specific regulated settings as it should not apply to individual or family homes. Alternatively, language such as excluding typical family homes could be added to clarify that private residences are not subject to these reconstruction requirements consistent with HCBS practices. 22101, DPHSS suggests limiting this requirement to specific provider-operated or large residential settings. Family members or individual personal care providers delivering services in a private home are not typically subject to health certificate requirements under HCBS. DPHSS also recommends confirming whether this requirement aligns with current practices under existing programs such as the DISID Caregiver Program. Madam Chair, I just would like to make sure that I didn't miss a page. I did miss a page. My apologies. Going back on section 7A105, subsection B2, DPHSS recommends including adult day services and adult day health within Tier 1 to reduce administrative burden and barriers to entry for prospective providers, as these are non-residential services and are distinct from the primarily residential settings otherwise listed in this category. Additionally, DPHSS suggests revising 4 or more individuals to 4 to 9 individuals to ensure consistency within the tiered framework. As settings serving 10 or more individuals are classified under Tier 3 in the current draft. Subsection B3, DPH recommends clarifying whether medication administration services includes delegation of medication infection administration and/or oversight of self-administration. These functions are common in smaller residential settings reflected in Tiers 1 and 2, and without clarification, the requirement may impose unintended and disproportionate regulatory burden on smaller providers. A clearer definition would help ensure requirements are appropriately scaled to the level of care provided. 7A 106 suggests removing reference to Adult Protective Services Registry, as the Division for Senior Citizens has not received the funding necessary to establish a central registry. DPHSS suggests shortening the 10-day response time for complaints. Standard regulatory practice typically establishes response times based on the severity of the allegation, with 24-hour responses expected in cases of imminent risk to health and safety. DPHSS suggests adding, but not limited to, after including, to allow for identification and adoption of additional trainings tailored to meet the needs of the unique populations served by HCBS. While DPHSS supports accessible complaint mechanisms, establishing and maintaining both a toll-free line and online portal would require significant time and financial resources, including dedicated staffing, system administration, and IT. To reduce burden, DPHSS recommends leveraging existing complaint intake systems or implementing a phased approach that begins with a single centralized intake method. Clarification of minimum functional and staffing requirements, as well as adequate budget allocation, would be necessary for both feasibility and long-term sustainability. 7A117. The proposed penalty of up to $10,000 per violation per day is unusually severe and may be disproportionate to the nature of certain violations. DPHSS either reducing the maximum penalty or establishing a tiered penalty structure that aligns with the severity and risk level of the violation. As drafted, the provision could be interpreted to apply the maximum penalty to relatively minor or technical deficiencies, such as a single expired fire extinguisher, creating undue deterrence for prospective providers. 7A120. DPHSS suggests revising this provision to explicitly include additional categories of required documentation, such as service delivery logs, medication administration records, and incident reports, nursing and other clinical assessments, and any records required under applicable local and federal regulations. Madam Chair, the department is very appreciative again of your leadership on this, and we will continue to work with you to refine this legislation so that it can be the best that we have. Ma'am, I have just one more from the Division of Environmental Health. I'll just start with the Division of Environmental Health, DEH, within DPHSS, is mandated under Section 21102 of Chapter 21, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, to promulgate rules and regulations necessary to ensure the sanitary operation of health-regulated establishments. While DEH supports the legislature's goal of creating a dedicated and independent statutory framework for Guam's HCBS to serve individuals with disabilities and our Manomku, we respectfully raise the following concerns, which we believe must be addressed before the bill is enacted to ensure that the mandate is legally sound and can be effectively executed. As introduced, Bill 329-38 COR assigns significant new regulatory responsibilities to DPHSS, and by extension DEH, without identifying any appropriation or funding source to support implementation. These responsibilities include, but are not limited to, annual announced inspections and a minimum of 2 unannounced inspections per license or certified setting per year. Complaint-driven investigations within 10 business days and immediate response to imminent danger complaints. Maintenance of a public online registry of all licensed and certified settings. Promulgation of implementing rules within 180 days of enactment, and conforming regulatory amendments to Title 26 Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations, Section 9302, within 180 days. DEH currently operates under significant staffing constraints. The addition of a new category of regulated settings without commensurate staffing or budgetary authorization constitutes an unfunded mandate that risks further reducing the oversight of all regulated entities. DEH respectfully urges the legislature to include in the final bill or in an accompanying budget action an initial appropriation sufficient to fund the equivalent of at least 2 additional environmental public health officer positions dedicated to HCBS inspections. As currently written, Bill 329-38 COR does not confer clear authority on DEH to regulate the sanitary operations of HCBS. DEH's authority to inspect and regulate establishments for compliance with public health and sanitation standards is grounded in Title 10 GCA, Chapter 21. And Chapter 21 lists the categories of establishment subject to that authority. HCBS, as newly defined in Chapter 7A in the proposed bill, are not enumerated within 10 GCA Chapter 21. Without a clear grant of authority in Chapter 21, any DEH inspection or enforcement action in HCBS may be legally vulnerable to challenge. The bill proposes amendments to the following provisions of Title 10 Guam Code annotated to include references to HCBS. Amending the definition of client to include persons in HCBS. 25102, extending communicable disease worker requirement restrictions to HCBS. 2104, extending communicable disease client notification duties to HCBS settings. 25105, applying construction and remodel review requirements to HCBS, and health certificates under 22101, requiring health certificates for persons employed in HCBS. While DEH supports the intent of extending communicable disease controls and health certificate requirements to HCBS, these proposed amendments create an internal conflict within the bill itself. Title 10 GCA Chapter 25 governs institutional facilities. Its scope, definitions, and regulatory standards are specifically designed for institutional settings such as hospitals, nursing homes, clinics, laboratories, penal institutions, schools, and childcare facilities. This is directly contradicted by the bill's own definition. Proposed Section 7A103D defines a home and community-based setting as a non-institutional, community-based setting that provides housing or supportive services or both to one or more residents, individuals, or program participants, consistent with federal HCBS requirements. Furthermore, Section 7A104B expressly provides that HCBS are not institutional facilities, amending Chapter 25 to insert HCBS alongside hospitals, nursing homes, and penal institution is therefore internally inconsistent with the bill's own definition. It risks creating confusion in which HCBS are simultaneously defined as non-institutional under Chapter 7A and treated as institutional for purposes of Chapter 25. This inconsistency could expose DEH enforcement actions to legal challenges and undermines the bill's stated intent to establish HCBS as distinct, non-institutional regulated facility. If the legislature intends for HCBS to be subject to DEH's sanitary inspection and environmental health enforcement authority, DEH suggests limiting such requirements to provider-operated or large residential settings where the level of public health risks justifies regulatory oversight. These requirements should not be proposed on individual homemakers, family caregivers, and personal care providers operating in a personal residence, again referencing back to HIPAA violations or privacy violations. Again, the Division of Environmental Health appreciates the sponsor's efforts to address a critical gap in Guam's healthcare and long-term care system. They also stand ready to work with the legislature to ensure that when enacted, this bill creates a legally sound and adequately resourced mandate that protects the health, safety, and dignity of all residents in home and community-based settings on Guam. And lastly, Madam Chair, I have a handout which talks about the 1915C waiver for your information. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We certainly have our work cut out for us. When is the director going to be back on island? And because she's frequently on and off island,
yes.
So is there another point of contact other than her that we can speak with directly regarding these amendments? Because we did send out the draft bill, and so it's kind of interesting we're seeing this right now.
She should be back by next week.
And aside from her, I mean, are we talking to Ms. Navarro on the DEH side? Who is the direct point of contact? Like, who wrote this?
Overall?
Yes.
There is another individual that I could probably tap onto to reach out, for you to reach out to.
Yeah, so if we have any questions, who can we speak with on the phone immediately?
Okay, and I will confirm
if you
that,
could give me that information after the hearing.
Absolutely. Will do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Summerfleck?
I feel guilty. I didn't come with 3 letters, 5 pages long. It's nice to see Peter John again. Always a pleasure. I'm not coming to support or not support the bill. I don't think that's my role. I'm coming more from the prospect of concern. And my concern is that we are at the tip of an iceberg with these community-based waivers. And right now, as was mentioned, in a couple months we'll open we should have our first community-based waiver. That waiver was intended to cover individuals who are at Guam Memorial Hospital or at Guam Regional Medical Center who can't be released because there was no place for them to go. Very, very straightforward. When you start looking at the numbers, though, what was 15 people is now like 3 people. They're not eligible for Medicaid, they don't fit the program, various other issues. We have right now in our inventory a beautiful big building. It's in Tamuning. It probably has 20 apartment units available in it. And I don't think we can open it because we don't have a program for it. And that is my concern with this bill, that we have various programs out there. We don't have various waivers, and I've been an advocate for waivers for an extended period of time. Why have I not sued the government of Guam over the waiver issue? Because we're capped. Our Medicaid is capped. other than during the pandemic, we've always been capped. So one of the questions I have, because it's never been enough up to now, and this is the question I also have with the waivers. If those waivers are taking money off of our general Medicaid, who's not going to get services? And what services aren't we going to be able to provide? The idea of expanding the MIP program, in my opinion, is continuing a failed process. My understanding of MIP was it was created because we opened St. Dominic's and it didn't make Medicaid standards. So we had to have a funding source for St. Dominic's so we would have a nursing care facility. Is that what we're doing also here? And how much money are we going to have to put in to MIP? Well, Peter John kind of answered that. There's no extra money in MIP. So where is the money to fund MIP going to come from? And at that point, do we want to fund MIP, or do we want to directly fund programs that provide services to our consumers? Oftentimes, we as a government look toward the federal government to solve our troubles. I would bring up SSI as one example. We're constantly complaining why the federal government does not give us SSI on Guam. Why our people don't receive it? Well, the reality is we are somewhat receiving it. We're receiving a small sliver of it called the Aid to the Permanently Blind and Disabled, which existed prior to Social SSI, but it's not as much. So the question in my mind's eye is, if SSI is so important, why aren't we funding it like states do? States get SSI money, but then they supplement it. We're receiving Aid to the Permanently Blind and Disabled, but we're not supplementing. So I bring this up to you because I represent a lot of low-income people. I represent a lot of persons with disabilities. And the question that I see coming in this is, where are they? Where are they in this bill? We have person-centered planning. It's part of the permanent injunction. It's called a multidisciplinary treatment team plan. I would ask you, if you ask the department today, how updated are they and how accurate are they? And do they even have the resources to develop a multidisciplinary plan? We talk about a person-centered plan here. We talk about services that are person-centered. What does that mean? Does that mean we're going to provide occupational therapy? Does that mean we're going to provide physical therapy, home-based services? What do these terms really mean is what my concern would be. I'm more than happy, as I did with the Department of Mental Health over 20 years, to help them develop a system. I'm not so inclined to say I'm going to spend the next 20 years working on community-based waivers that can be used for other than the populations I represent. Do I care about our Mononco? Yes. Am I becoming one of a Mononco? Yes. But my mission is persons with disabilities. And I have to say, I would prefer our money goes to the young and for their success than providing me a place to live. I would rather have a place for our children to live. And I would point out to you one of our other programs that we have, and that is a program for children in foster care system. Is that the roadmap for what's going to happen here? We build a facility for 24 people, then we pack in 48? Is that what the plan is going to eventually become? I like the bill. I really do like the bill. The thought process behind it is brand new on Guam. Let's have levels of care. Let's fund different levels of care. Let's look at levels of care. Spectacular. Every one of those concepts I support. But where's the person-centered planning going to come from? Who's going to do that planning? Who's going to sit down and meet with the consumers and develop that plan? This bill is spectacular, but it doesn't have the money behind it to implement it. And I know I've sat before with the veterans and I heard all of that as well. And I don't want to have consumers calling me up saying, how come I don't get home community-based care? How come I can't have someone come to my house and help me clean up a little bit, help me get it transitioned from my bed to my chair, from my chair to my bed? How come I don't get that? And that's the other question I have here. Who gets these services? How is that determined who gets it? Because that's going to be one of the bigger questions we're going to face is, why does this person get it, but I don't get it? And that's where these regulations, in my mind's eye, are a lion's task. It is going to take more than 180 days, and it's going to take a whole lot more than 2 or 3 different organizations coordinating. And I've done coordinating before. I've sat and I've written whole plans out for Guam behavioral health. I've presented it to them. I've talked to them about it. I've given them resources. Did anyone read all of the documents I gave? No. That's why I sued them. I was tired of trying to work with them. I was tired of producing plans that went nowhere. We need, and I would opine, that the first step in this process needs to occur. And let's define what we're going to really offer to people. What are we really saying when we talk about 3 tiers? I can tell you an easy place to do the groundwork. Our foster care programs need this just as much as this does. What are our definitions of our programs? Who are we providing services to? What levels of care are being provided? Each foster parent gets the same amount of money, no matter if they have an infant or they have a 16-year-old who's been in and out of Guam behavioral, who's got the correction system chasing after them. Is that an equal cost? Let's look at all the services we're providing and let's start scaling them all so that we can start saying to foster parents, if you're taking a difficult case, you're level 3. And instead of getting $700 and some a month, you get $1,400 and some per month. And let's see how many people change their attitude toward foster care when they can actually support themselves by caring for 3 or 4 foster children. I've worked in the foster care system, not here on Guam, but in Duluth, Minnesota. I worked for someone who ran a foster care program, a group home, 5 children living in a house. That supported him, that supported, well, didn't support me, but gave me some money, and another person. That's what we need to start looking at. We need to start looking at how can we encourage. The same thing applies here. How can we encourage businesses to come in here? And that was the very positive thing I saw in this bill. This is opening the door for private business to come in and start providing services. That's exactly what we need. while I can't say that I support or don't support the bill, I wholeheartedly like some of the concepts contained in here. I don't particularly like that we're playing with MIP. I don't particularly like that, and maybe there is a fiscal note that says we're not spending all of our Medicaid money. I would be surprised if that was the case, because I think the only time we had open door was during the pandemic and we didn't have the cap. We are capped at how much we receive in Medicaid. Once we exceed that cap, it's 100% our dollars. So if we're looking at spending our dollars, is this the way we want to spend them? And how much of our dollars are we putting into that program if this is the way we're going? And this is why I've always been concerned about waivers. Because it's not really going to be paid for by the feds. It's really going to be paid for by us. So I salute the legislature's effort in trying to categorize and trying to understand the needs of our Mononco and our disabled population. I'm very worried that we might undo things we don't want to undo. I'm very worried that we may create expectations that we can't meet. And I'm very worried that very shortly down the road, my door is going to be being pounded on by everyone who is saying, I didn't get the HBC waiver. How come this person gets it and I don't? And that's going to be a question that's going to be asked of you. And it's going to be asked of Peter John and his people. Do I agree with everything Peter John said? Absolutely not. I think that these places should be inspected more than every year. I think there should be vigorous follow-up on all of these programs. We go out to all of the group homes and care facilities on Guam for persons with disabilities. We go out monthly. And the reason we go out monthly is so that our staff can point out, this isn't right, it needs to be corrected. This isn't right, it needs to be corrected. And report to me, do we have a dangerous environment here? Do we need to do more intervention? I would much prefer working on the front end than working in suing you on the back end. I think creating legislation like this and refining it is an area we should go. How much of my funding that you don't give me anything can I use for this? I've got to sort that out, but I certainly can't put 1,000 hours in 6 months, which is what I view as the minimum that is needed to get this bill and the regulations rocking and rolling. So I think I would encourage the legislature to form a special group to start developing these regulations. I would task not only public health, but DISIT and Guam Behavioral and the Division of Senior Citizens, which is also public health, to be involved. I would opine to you that you will get more involvement if you put appropriations with it. To expect nonprofits who are receiving federal dollars to use those federal dollars that are very precious to us on a project that may never come to fruition I don't know that I can say I can put aside that much of my finances for this type of activity. But I would say that if you were to give me enough to finance it, I would have dedicated staff at every single one of the meetings. I probably would have dedicated staff to any meetings anyways, because I believe in this. But I don't know how long I can do that. So that would be my thoughts, and I would very much thank those of you that supported this bill. Even if I can't say, yippee, let's go forward with it, I think it is a tremendous effort, and it's a tremendous call for us to act. So I am grateful for the bill, and I thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Summerfleck, Ms. June, and Mr. Camacho for testifying on this bill today. Are there any questions from my colleagues? Senator Ada? Like to...
I don't have any questions, Madam Chair, just comments that I'd like to thank the panel for coming down here and giving their input. I think it's very important as we structure this piece of legislation. Attorney Summerfleck, it's just like, how we never had hospice care here on the island before. And now, it's something that is really treasured by a lot of families.
Of great value.
Yeah.
Of great value.
And something, like this piece of legislation as well, as long as we thread carefully on how we move forward to implement, and getting the input from the stakeholders is very important. And again, I thank you all for coming down to testify in this piece of legislation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Ada. Senator Duenas?
Just modestly, Madam Chair, I just want to add just a couple of small comments. And thank you, for coming to the table. Certainly, I've been behind big policies before, and I know what it takes. It's a lot of slogging, and we thank you for giving us some structure, adding some structure to the bill, and I agree. I signed on to this bill because I personally have experienced, in the last couple of years, what it means to take care of aged population, and what not only myself but other people are going through. And it's more common now in a social setting where you sit by and there's a lot of discussion, and you're right, the private sector is building out on this. So there's a lot of I think there's a lot of opportunity, and it's definitely a huge opportunity need in our community. So I agree with you all, particularly you, Mr. Summerfleck. I want to say that when I first got involved in government and started at the Department of Youth Affairs, I had no idea what systems of care meant. And I had no idea how many of our children were being left in a morass of a system to navigate, and that all these same situations, and there's money involved, but all these same mandated partners came together, and before you know it, there was this transformation where everybody understood that special need kids and children with different difficulties with wraparound services and everything else was the key to making sure that severely emotionally disturbed and others could actually receive services and transform that system. I see a lot of that in this, so I want to continue to help, and thank you for your contributions today and your testimony to the entire panel. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, if I can just reiterate, right, as you had mentioned, Senator Duenas, about those programs with funding, right? And so I think that's where I had started off in talking about, I think the values, the thoughts with HCBS is something that our community and the island of Guam, we need and we value. But there's got to be funding put to it, and effort and time to really think through what does it look like here on Guam. And so, Mr. Camacho, thank you for really drilling down the details of the specifics. And then, of course, Dan, I always appreciate listening to him because he's a wise man, pretty soon a wise old man, right? But he'll always be our partner in the area of disabilities. And so we think about how we want to engage, and we want to engage, right? We want to engage in making this a reality. but we do need specific funding for this because DPHSS can't do it, right? Just with what they have. And we as federally funded projects really can't devote the amount of time needed to make it work. So I'll close with that, as I started with that. I'll close with it. Thank you.
Once again, thank you so much for your time and coming down and testifying on the bill. Again, this is just the first round of this bill, and we'll undergo a markup based on the input that we received today, and probably even more meetings, right, roundtable discussions before this bill even makes it onto the session agenda. And once we mark it up, I will certainly be presenting it to Public Health, as well as Mr. Summerfleck and Ms. Ju.
And I would be honored to work with the legislature on this. You know, I just always have to be careful that I'm not lobbying.
We need to educate. We're educated.
We can educate as much as we want, but not lobby.
And once again, thank you. Thank you again for coming down. The time is now 5:21 in the afternoon, and that concludes this hearing by the Committee on Health and Veterans Affairs. Sidzo Masi.